Alright, we're back with more of the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. We're about to enter into the second day of court. So here we go. The 4th of November, 9:30 a.m. The Old Bailey courtroom. Clang. Before we begin today, I have a brief announcement. As with the closed trial 10 years ago, some astonishing facts have come to light in these proceedings. The revelation that the well-known Reaper is actually an organization illegally executing its own brand of justice. And the discovery that a respected yard inspector was at its heart until he himself perished in the assassination plot. Well, I say to all members of the judiciary here present on this occasion that we will stop at nothing to uncover the whole truth behind these disturbing findings. Counsels, you will undertake this trial with the resolve to pursue the truth to its bitter end. Resolve, yes, that's my intention. My lord, if I may inquire, the defendant may speak. On what grounds is Kazuma Osogi permitted to continue his role as prosecutor? He has admitted to colluding with the victim in a plot to assassinate an innocent man. He shouldn't be enjoying the privilege of freedom, let alone be leading the prosecution. I submitted a written petition to Lord Strongheart, requesting the judgment of my transgressions be delayed by 1 day. You did what? In today's proceedings, I intend to expose everything. My whole life for the last 10 years has all been leading up to this one day. Kazuma. Whatever the outcome of this trial, I give my word that I will accept whatever punishment is deemed appropriate, however severe. And I suggest you prepare yourself for the same, Reaper. Kazuma is bristling with hostility today, rather. I get the distinct impression we're heading into very dangerous territory. Is that really even Kazuma standing before us? As an extreme exception to normal practices, I have granted the prosecutor's request. The defense finds this acceptable, I presume? Yes, my lord. Clang. In that case, in the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby declare this court to be in session again. We resume the closing hearing of Barack Van Zeeks. The defense is ready, my lord. The prosecution is more than ready. Very well, then. This preamble has taken long enough. Prosecutor Osogi, begin. As you wish, my lord. The prosecution calls the first witness to the stand. Bring Sashiro Jigoku into the courtroom. At last, then, we've reached the final battle. He's putting literally everything on the line now in order to get to the truth. Come on, Ryunosuke, it's time for that steely resolve, because this is going to test it to the limit. Witness, state your name and occupation for the court. Ha. So it is you who had issued this, was it? Your subpoena? I did what was necessary. Ha 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 ha. Well, look what the young man has become. I didn't think I'd see the day when you'd take that tone with me, I must say. The witness will ensure his responses are pertinent to the questions asked. My name is Seshiro Jigoku, a Supreme Court judge for the Empire of Japan. 16 years ago, this man came to London as a visiting student. 6 years later, he returned to Japan. As well as presiding over the Supreme Court, he is also currently Japan's Minister of Foreign Affairs. I am, of course, fully aware of Mr. Jigoku and his preeminent roles. I invited him personally to the International Forensic Science Symposium as a representative of his country. I hear he also played a key role in the conclusion of the Anglo-Japanese Treaty of Friendship and Navigation. It was a great honor to be involved in the negotiations. I put my all into that treaty. Judge Jigoku, I must ask. Well, I never fancy the young murdering student turning up here of all places. You acquitted me yourself, and now I'm a practicing defense lawyer. Yes, and full of self-importance, like your friend across the courtroom, I see. You came here to London by invitation to the International Forensic Science Symposium. But then, without informing anyone of your plans, you took flight to France. Took flight? I'd have to object to that turn of phrase. Then explain yourself. What exactly were the circumstances? Well, I was somewhat expecting this, and I'm sorry to say, it's none of your beeswax. I decline to comment. What? Nani? Leaving the country prematurely when I was an invited guest may be questionable etiquette, but my decision is unrelated to this case. I can't be bound to testify. Unrelated, you say? I appreciate that a respected police inspector has been killed, for which I offer my condolences. However, being an alien, I'd obviously never met the man, nor do I know the first thing about him. As such, I'm in no position to testify. It's as simple as that. So you would run from all this? I beg your pardon? This case is more far-reaching than the murder of Inspector Gregson. It has ties to another murder, a case that was tried in Japan almost a year ago now. A year ago in Japan, the murder of Dr. John H. Wilson, you mean? That's right. And you, Judge Jigoku, are at the heart of both cases. The defense has evidence to prove it. Well, Ryunosuke, I see from the look in your eyes that you're resolved to carry this through to the very end, too. Let's see your evidence, then. What proof do you have that Seshiro Jigoku is involved in this case? Oh, it's just, this. Take that. This is a telegram detailing a communication sent between Britain and Japan approximately 1 year ago. The communication contained 4 names: Kei Asogi, A. Shin, T. Gregson, and J. Wilson. Hold it. Where did you get that? You little... Where did you get that? Well, we broke into your home, you see. In Tokyo from your office, Judge Jigoku. What, Nani? How on earth did you... What's this all about? Why is my name on that list? This list of 4 names follows a certain pattern. T. Gregson and J. Wilson are the names of victims. Kei Asogi and A. Shin are the names of assassins. Ugh, no. A year ago in Tokyo, Dr. John H. Wilson's life was taken in a Western-style restaurant in the capital. The culprit was found to be a visiting student who went by the name of Giselle Brett, but her real name was Asa Shin, a professional killer sent on a mission to kill from Great Britain. A. Shin and her victim, J. Wilson. And the murder that just took place here in London was the counterpart of that crime. An assassin sent from Japan, also a visiting student, Kazuma Asogi, whose victim was the British police inspector Tobias Gregson. K. Asogi and T. Gregson. One assassin from each country to kill a target residing in the other. What exactly is the defense suggesting? These two cases of murder, one that took place in Britain and one in Japan, were masterminded by a pair of individuals from each country as a form of assassin exchange. And the telegram the defense has acquired is proof of this international contract to kill. What? What? Nani? The telegram was found in your office, Judge Jigoku. In other words, the mastermind in Japan was you. I'm guessing this is a frame-up that Kazuma had nothing to do with any of this. Judge Jigoku, what's this all about? I don't have to tell you shit. And you, Kazuma, you lied. During yesterday's proceedings, you acknowledged that you accepted the assassination mission. But the mark wasn't Judge Jigoku at all. It was T. Gregson, Detective Inspector of Scotland Yard, as shown by the name on the killing contract. No, I think he was telling the truth there. Very impressive. Ooh. Very impressive, Ryunosuke. But actually, I didn't lie. Oh, so I was right. I was right the first time. Never flip-flop on your theories. The name of the target I was ordered to kill never passed my lips yesterday. The idea that Seishiro Jigoku was the mark came entirely from you. Oh, very tricky. Ah. You deliberately avoided saying a name. Clang. The defense claims these four names indicate some sort of international assassin exchange. I'm sure I speak for all present when I say that the very idea seems utterly absurd. Well, Mr. Jigoku, what do you have to say for yourself? His silence only goes to prove his guilt. There's another very important point that this new development brings to light. There's now a distinct possibility that the scene of Inspector Gregson's actual murder was in the witness's cabin aboard the SS Grus. Yes. Judge Jigoku, you have to testify now. To refuse would put you in contempt of court. Ha 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 ha. There's no need for quite such a vicious stare, young man. Very well, then. As a parting gift to you all, I'll tell you everything I know. Excellent. Yes, excellent. Seems this Japanese gentleman has information that the court must hear about the alleged assassin exchange and the events of the night of October 31st. Present your formal testimony now. Bong. As you wish, my lord. Witness testimony. The assassin exchange. It's true that Kazuma Asogi was assigned the assassination mission 1 year ago now. The target was Inspector T. Gregson. That was a condition of the British study tour. However, in the end, something happened that meant the young man was unable to carry out his mission. On the evening in question, a member of the crew was on duty outside my cabin at all times. If there'd been a shot fired, the crewman would have heard it, so clearly I can't be involved. Interesting. So you admit it then, as this communication suggests. There really was an assassination exchange agreement between Britain and Japan. A political endeavor at the highest levels, not something I can discuss here. God, this judge is an asshole. Who would have thought that from the beginning of the game? To use such a worthy practice as foreign study to coerce somebody into committing murder. It's the most appalling thing I've ever heard. Appalling? Well, it's easy to judge. I should know. Pardon? Asogi had a reason for taking his sword to that British inspector, you know. What? Nani? Which is why he accepted the mission in the first place. Isn't that right, Counsel? Kazuma. Judge Jigoku, if you are the mastermind behind this operation in Japan, then tell the court the identity of your counterpart in Britain. Ooh. I'm not obliged to divulge that information. As I said yesterday, I have killed nobody. I freely admit that I accepted the mission, but on the night the plan was to be executed, I backed out. In short, this assassination exchange that the defense has identified is unrelated to the events of this case. The crucial point is this. Your police inspector can't have perished aboard that steamship in Dunkirk, because if he'd been shot in the cabin, it's inconceivable that a member of the crew wouldn't have heard it. That's right. Gregson was killed after returning to London in the room on Fresno Street. And the perpetrator of the crime was the Reaper, Barack Van Zieks. The prosecution's accusation remains unchanged. Bastard. Clang. To think that a seemingly innocent foreign exchange program was a facade for such Machiavellian dealings. Clearly it's a plot only a government minister and high-ranking judge such as the witness could hope to execute. Well, I seem to recall that it was someone on the British side who controlled everything. Be that as it may, it is not the place of this court to pursue this villainous assassin exchange plot. We are concerned only with the tangible events pertaining to the murder of Inspector Gregson. Is the defense clear on that point, Counsel? Indeed, yes, my lord. I'll keep that in mind as I cross-examine the witness. Cross-examination. The assassin exchange. It's true that Cosmo was assigned as... blah, blah. Okay. A year ago, when Cosmo was still in Japan then. Correct. It was at the examination center for applicants for the study tour that I approached him. I'll never forget it. I remember exactly what you said. You just came out and asked me forthright if I'd consider traveling to Britain on an assassination mission. Surely not. Don't call me Shirley. I thought it was a joke at first, of course, but then it was made clear to me that if I didn't accept, I wouldn't be considered for the study tour. So, you agreed to it just for that? I mean, I know how much you wanted to study in England, but assassination? The Empire of Japan had accepted a proposal from the British Empire at the time, an agreement to send a student from each country to the others to deepen cultural understanding and friendship. But behind the scenes, the chosen students were to be given assassination missions. I had no choice but to accept the proposal that originated from my British counterpart. What? Why didn't you expose the plot there and then? Clang. Britain acknowledges no part in these alleged misbegotten dealings. I advise you not to make spurious allegations, Foreign Minister Jigoku. As a witness, I am bound to tell the truth, my lord. Anyway, I picked Asogi and explained the details of the plan to him. The target was Inspector T. Gregson. That was a condition of the British study tour. Hold it. Why, Cosmo? Why did you pick him as an assassin? He was the most capable of all applicants, and in addition, I knew his desire to travel to Britain was very strong. In fact, it was almost more than a desire. It was his whole purpose in life. Yes, as his best friend, I can certainly attest to that. The way he threw himself into his studies, the way he pursued becoming qualified as a lawyer, it was all ultimately for that one single goal of being accepted on a study tour to Britain. And of course, we know the reason behind that. He was determined to find out for himself the truth about his father, Genshin Asogi. There's nothing I wouldn't have done to get here. But that agreeing, be that agreeing to assume the role of an assassin or betraying the people's trust. Well, you certainly did a fine job of betraying mine, Asogi. But why was Inspector Gregson the target? That's a good fucking question. I have no idea. Those were the orders from Britain. I was in no position to question them. Oh, because he was, because somebody knew that Gregson was doing his own investigation behind the scenes. Somebody was onto him a year ago. And that somebody is in the judge's seat right now. It's gotta be him. I have no idea. Those were the orders from Britain. I was in no position to question them. You have no idea? Really? I find it hard to believe. Oh, do you? Judge Jigoku was once a visiting student here in Great Britain himself, of course. Perhaps he has some connection with Inspector Gregson from that time. The defense really ought to catch up. With what? With the fact that the assassin exchange has absolutely nothing to do with the case under scrutiny here. Yes, I've already admitted to recruiting Asogi. However, in the end, something happened that meant the young man was unable to carry out his mission. I presume you're referring to the incident that occurred during Cosmo's passage to Britain in January. The awful tragedy that took place on the steamship. Word arrived at the ministry some 2 weeks after the ship's departure from our shores. The visiting student had been killed, but his body had somehow gone missing in Hong Kong. The news was wired to me from a detective I'd placed on the ship to accompany the assassin. Obviously, Cosmo didn't actually die at all, but he did lose his memory, including all details of his special mission. Did you not consider dispatching another assassin at that point? That wasn't possible, simply because that black-clad young student over there had already put himself forward as Asogi's replacement, and there was no way to stop him from reaching Britain. My hands were completely tied. So Mr. Sholmes' strategy worked perfectly. He predicted everything that would happen. He is a genius. Months later, my memory returned. But I'd never intended to go through with the assassination mission anyway. So you were playing me right from the outset, were you? Is that it? I'd sooner be guilty of that crime than taking someone else's life. I was prepared to do whatever I had to in order to get myself here to Britain. Clang. That line of questioning has gone on long enough. All the court should be concerned about is, in this testimony given by this witness, are details relating to his relationship with Inspector Gregson and the victim's murder. In that case, as I've already made perfectly clear, I had no connection to the man or his death. And you had some means of substantiating this plea? On the evening in question, a member of the crew was on duty outside my cabin at all times. Hold it. Outside your cabin in the first class area of the SS Groose, you mean? Yes, that's right. Not least because there was a murder of a student passenger earlier in the year, I imagine. The liner operators have taken to posting a crewman outside every first-class cabin door. I can confirm the presence of the crewmen guarding, the crewmen guard myself. What do you mean? Because I accompanied Inspector Gregson to Dunkirk that night. I witnessed it with my own eyes. There was a well-built crewman standing guard directly in front of the door to the witness's cabin. At that particular time, of course, I'd gone to the ship's dining room for dinner. The inspector and I asked the crewman to allow us into the cabin while we waited for Judge Jigoku's return. I suppose Inspector Gregson was there in his capacity as the Reaper. He was intending to take the witness's life. Exactly. As I've said numerous times now, I had no intention of killing anyone. So the crewman let two potential assassins into the cabin he was supposed to be guarding? Not the most convincing of sentries, really. In truth, those are my thoughts, too. But anyway, I stayed to talk with Inspector Gregson for a short while, and then I left him there and made my way off the ship alone. Was the guard still at the door when you went? Yes. He glared at me as I walked past. You see? You see? Your stupid minds. That proves it. If there had been a shot fired, the crewman would have heard it, so clearly I can't be involved.
Hold it!
The crewman who was standing directly outside your cabin door, you mean? That's right. A muscular man with a permanent grim expression on his face. He didn't once move from that spot. To be honest, I thought he was a miserable fellow. But as it happens, he's a vital witness now. There's no doubt that Gregson was killed by a gunshot, and it's inconceivable that a crewman standing just outside the cabin door wouldn't have heard it. But wait, what about the ship's enormous steam engines? The noise of them could have drowned out the sound of the gun being fired. Sadly, young judicial assistant, that won't wash. Oh? You will recall that my cabin was in the first-class area of the ship, which is also, of course, the quietest. Don't imagine for a moment that it's anything like steerage where the judicial assistants go. I didn't mean... But a hole like that made by a bullet was found in your cabin, Judge Jigoku. That's compelling evidence that a gun was fired in there. What's that? A bullet hole? Oh yes, you're talking about what the detective uncovered in the wall yesterday, I presume. That was obviously a rotten panel eaten out by a woodworm. No doubt he didn't find an actual bullet. Ugh, that's the hole in the argument. Sadly, I was unable to arrange for the crewman to be brought back to Britain with me. But obviously, if a gun had been fired in my cabin on the night in question, as the defense implies, I would have been arrested on the spot and would have never made it to Britain in the first place. Clang. Very true, the witness's logic is sound, since no gunshot was heard from the witness's cabin on the night in question. We must assume the witness is telling the truth. I'm glad you've seen sense, my lord. I know Cosmo's already admitted to taking on this incredible assassination plot, but even so, hearing it confirmed by somebody else is still a real shock. It's unforgivable, using Cosmo's feelings to manipulate him into agreeing to such a despicable plan. But I think Cosmo manipulated Judge Jigoku too. He completely double-crossed him. Oh dear. It's hard not to see that as a stroke of brilliance on Cosmo's part. One way or another, though, Gregson ended up dead. I really think that the murder must have happened aboard the steamship. So you mean Judge Jigoku must be lying? I know I shouldn't let my emotions cloud my judgment. But you must destroy him, Naruhodo. It's true that Cosmo Soga was... Okay, so we're back at the beginning. Inspector Gregson. We're in the end. Something happened. I don't know. Well, let's look at this thing. See these little things all over the place? You see these things all over the place, don't you? It's the part of the top of a pocket watch that you twist to set the... Oh, it's called a crown, I believe. A watch would be quite useless without one. The crown, like what sits on top of a monarch's head. That's a very grand name for such a tiny part. But actually, yes, Mr. Naruhodo? If this is a crown, I have a feeling I might have seen a monarch around here somewhere with a very bare head. If by monarch you mean pocket watch, then I'm quite sure you have. Okay, is this a button? Nope, doesn't do anything. So let's go back to that pocket watch. Where's the pocket watch? There it is. Let's, no, don't present. I almost hit the wrong button. No, come on. There we go. What do you think, Miss Susato? I feel sure I know exactly what will fit here. Really? I was just thinking precisely the same thing. We're about to see that the little round component is actually part of Inspector Gregson's broken pocket watch. Really? I was just thinking precisely that too. Aha! A perfect fit. I knew it. All right, perhaps you knew it. I'll make a note of this new information at once. Detail of the small component have been updated in the court record. Okay, what I've heard. Clearly... Oh, okay, pocket watch. I haven't... Now clear that it's missing crown of Inspector Gregson's pocket watch. Okay, now I have to figure out... I have to figure out what statement this goes to. The evening in question, a member of the crew was on duty outside the cabin. In the end, something happened that... For the study tour... I don't know. What statement does this go to? Is there something else that I'm missing? Okay, following departure from the port of Dunkirk, all crew members are required to assemble on the main deck at 10 p.m. in order to review evacuation procedures. The drill will take 20 minutes. Crew to resume duties as soon as the drill is over. Okay. Has anything to do with it. Yeah, the young man was unable to carry out his mission. Question: a member of the crew was on duty outside the cabin. Oh! This says otherwise. All crew members are required to assemble on the main deck at 10 p.m. in order to review evacuation procedures. The drill will take 20 minutes. So the murder happened in those 20 minutes. Sure, let's go for it. Yes! Yes, as the court has heard, there was a crewman posted outside Judge Jikoku's cabin. However, we can be sure that, contrary to the witness's claim, the guard wasn't there at all times. What? Nani? I have here a notice of a particular event that was scheduled to take place aboard the steamship on the 31st. Nani? Where did you get that? It was found in your room while you were there, dummy. It's evidence gathered by Mr. Herlock Sholmes himself. You were literally right there. You were acquainted yesterday, if I remember. Herlock Sholmes again. According to this itinerary, after leaving the port of Dunkirk at exactly 10 p.m. and for a period of 20 minutes, all crewmen of the SS Groose were to gather on deck for an evacuation drill. All crewmen were away from their spots. And during that 20-minute interval, of course, any gunshots emanating from your cabin would have been heard by no one. In summary, Judge Jikoku, you had ample opportunity to commit the crime. Ugh. Objection. A 20-minute window of opportunity, that's an excellent find, Ryunosuke. But it amounts to nothing. Why? Because the witness clearly stated in his testimony that no incident occurred in his cabin. Bullshit! Unless you have some decisive evidence that can show his testimony to be false. Your accusation is nothing more than conjecture. Very true. Well, counsel. Inspector Gregson was killed in Judge Jikoku's cabin that night. I'm certain of it. Because the defense has the evidence to prove it. Oh, that's when the watch got busted. Oh. You will present the evidence for the defense at once, counsel. What proof do you have that the victim's life was taken in Judge Jikoku's cabin on the 31st of October? Well, oh, just a little something. This right here. Fuck you, Judge Jikoku. This was found in your cabin yesterday. What is that? The crown of a pocket watch? A pocket watch? And if you will observe, the victim's pocket watch, which we know he treasured, is missing precisely that part. It can't be. Moreover, this crown is a perfect fit on the spindle protruding from the victim's watch. Now, the fact that this was retrieved from Judge Jikoku's cabin tells us that the victim's watch almost certainly broke there. In other words, the victim was killed on the 31st during the 20-minute evacuation drill in the cabin occupied by you, Judge Jikoku. Well, you're razor sharp, aren't you, you young murderer? I didn't kill anybody.
Objection.
Expertly maneuvered, Ryunosuke. And your argument sounds entirely plausible, at first. But rather like this pocket watch, it's full of cracks. What? Nani? And I believe Judge Jikoku feels the same way. I was wrong to acquit you earlier this year. earlier in the year. Wait, what? What exactly did you say? I was wrong to acquit you earlier in the year. Okay. Sorry? If I'd known that it would result in anyone having to listen to this drivel, I would have declared you guilty just to spare the world your ridiculous bombast. I think it's clear that the witness will have to give further testimony. When you hear what actually happened in my cabin that night, you'll notice the pitfall into which you've stumbled. Clang. Prior to your renewed testimony, I would like to clarify one point. The fact that this part of the victim's watch was discovered in your cabin means that you acknowledge that he was there, I presume. Yes, I do. And the kitty cat is here. What you doing, kiddo? Very well, then. You may proceed to give your formal testimony. Be quiet. About what exactly happened in your cabin aboard the ship on the evening of the 31st of October. Of course, as a man of the law, I have no intention of obstructing justice. The events in the cabin. I had a guest waiting for me when I returned to my cabin after finishing my evening meal in the dining room. When I walked through the door, a mustachioed Englishman was there, foolishly waving a gun at me. I soon took care of him with, what? The Ippon... Oh, his tackle thing. He couldn't wait to run away after that. I imagine his watch must have broken when I threw him over my shoulder. It was nothing to do with his murder. The inspector was clearly killed having returned to Britain because his body was found in London. And the cat is here again. Ippon... I don't even know how to pronounce that. A common jujitsu martial arts technique in my country. Yes. The cat... Get out of the way, kid. My cat. Okay. I was careful not to use too much force, but the man obviously landed too heavily for his watch to take. So, Ryunosuke Naruhodo, I imagine you can see the flaw in your logic now, can't you? What? The fact that the pocket watch was broken in the witness's cabin is in no way proves that the victim's murder took place there. Ugh. Bastard. I have no doubt the inspector intended to kill me, but he didn't manage to pull the trigger. Yes, because he was merely the tactician, not the Reaper's hand of death. Well, the testimony appears to make perfect sense as far as I can tell. Let me express my deep gratitude for your understanding, my lord. But if this testimony holds, Judge Jigoku will be deemed to have no involvement in the case. Well, counsel, I really see no reason for wasting precious court time here on a cross-examination. Oh, I beg to differ. I'm here to waste lots of time. Sorry, my lord, the defense has a right to cross-examine, and I don't intend to squander that. You're an embarrassment to your countrymen, not knowing when you're beaten. Clang. In that case, proceed, Mr. Naruhodo. Cross-examination. The events in the cabin. Let's see, I had a guest waiting for me when I returned to my cabin. Okay. Hold it. Because the so-called guard posted at your cabin door had just let your killer pass, you mean? Apparently, Gregson told the crewman he was a police inspector, which was the truth, of course. He wouldn't have had his identification with him, though. He had his trench coat and a mustache, not to mention the bag of chips. I imagine the crewman was convinced. But the man accompanying him would have two swords slung around. Wait, what? The man accompanying him would have had 2 swords slung around his waist. Is that a typo? Oh well. You mean me? Who else? Yes, that's true. You would have hoped the sight of a few swords might have set off alarm bells in the guard's head. The point is, I left the cabin before its occupant returned, and I immediately disembarked the ship. Certainly, all I can tell you is that only the inspector was waiting for me when I arrived back at my cabin. And you entered without any inkling of suspicion? That's right. None whatsoever. When I walked through the door, a mustachioed Englishman was there, foolishly waving a gun at me. Okay, obviously you're talking about Inspector Gregson. Yes, though at the time I didn't know the man's name. And there was no time for introductions. I value my time over manners. By which you mean that the inspector was there to assassinate you, I suppose. That was certainly the impression given by the gun pointed in my direction. But I've never seen the muzzle of a revolver shake about so much in all my life. Anyone would think the man had never shot somebody before. Believe it or not, most of us haven't. Anyway, there was no time to call for the help of the crewman at the door, so I dealt with the man myself. I soon took care of him with my over-the-shoulder tackle. He couldn't wait to run away after that. Hold it. Even though the man had a gun, that was very brave. That was a very brave move, wasn't it? Ha 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 ha. My shoulder throw is far faster than a bullet, I can assure you. But surely all that commotion caused the crewman to come in, didn't it? Don't call me Shirley. I mean, yes, of course. He burst in immediately without knocking. The inspector hurled himself at the stocky fellow and just managed to slip past him to make his escape. I highly doubt this. The outstanding guard does it again. Luckily, there aren't many situations I can't get out of using a quick quick shoulder throw. I imagine his watch was broken when I threw him over my shoulder. It has nothing to do with his murder. See, he was so busy, I was so busy watching my step that I stepped on his watch. Hold it! Hold it. The crown snapped off and the glass covering the face of the watch was cracked. Preferable to the man's head being pulled off and his spine cracking, wouldn't you say? Not that the man was spared for long. A bullet to the chest soon saw to that. But the point is, the broken pocket watch doesn't prove that a murder took place. Absolutely not. All the watch proves is the power of my jujitsu throw. Whatever you say, it doesn't quite ring true that no shot was fired in that cabin. Because there was an obvious bullet hole in the wall that you tried to cover up. What are you talking about? That's what the star of your lowbrow detective stories told you, is it? Well, I don't care for such fiction. Haven't you worked it out yet? Your little stripling. You little stripling. No murder took place in my cabin. Bill returning to Britain because his body was found in London. Hold it! But there's no evidence that proves the victim ever returned to London alive. Just take a moment to think that idea of yours through now, stripling. What? If the inspector was killed on the steamship in France, how on earth could he have got back to Britain? When people die, their bodies remain at the same spot. It's a devil of a thing. Well, then, obviously the culprit must have moved the body. How exactly? In a trunk. Carrying a corpse off a ship in your arms would raise a few eyebrows at least, don't you think? Well, yes, that's true, but all passenger luggage is inspected when it is unloaded from arriving vessels. Okay, so that cancels that. I would like to think the border police would query the corpse of an English gentleman as hand luggage. If the murder had taken place aboard the ship, you would imagine the body would have been disposed of at sea. There would be no sense in risking being caught by attempting to transport the body back to Britain. Ugh. That's killed that idea then. But perhaps not. Miss Susato? We've heard that the first-class passengers were under constant scrutiny by the crewmen posted to guard them, which would mean that the culprit had no opportunity to dispose of the body in the sea. Yes, that's true. So transporting the body to Britain may have been the only viable alternative. Dear me, you really are new at this, aren't you? I thought I'd been perfectly clear, but it seems I'm going to have to explain it to you in words you can understand. Goo goo gaga baba mama dada. I mean, I think I ought to alter my testimony with your consent, of course, my lord. Ooh. I have no objection. State your amended testimony now. There's no possible way I could have transported the victim's corpse back to Britain. We'll just see about that.
Hold it!
Hold it. There's an idea. Think about it, stripling. All passengers and crew disembarked at the same time and passed through the same checks at the border. The symposium guests were then driven straight to the hotel in carriages organized by the ministry. And we met you as soon as you arrived at the hotel. Yes, you did. Well then, remind me, did I have a corpse over my shoulder at the time? What? No. So we're in agreement then. I couldn't possibly have brought the inspector's body back to Britain. Unless, of course, they've developed some clever device these days to instantly move things from A to B. Callback. Funny you should say that. Professor Hairbrain's invention didn't actually work, if you remember, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes, of course. The defense has become unusually quiet, I notice. Yes, because there's really nothing more to say. So that's his story. Well, I suppose if you think about it, whenever you drop a teacup in the office and it breaks, we don't say Mr. Naruhodo must have murdered there, do we? Is that a veiled threat about what might happen to me if I break another one? And the fact is that Inspector Gregson's body was found in the little room on Fresno Street. If he really was killed in Judge Jigoku's cabin, the body would have been moved somehow, obviously. Transporting a dead body over a country border, that would be impossible for the majority of people. So there must have been some special circumstances that made it possible for the culprit then. That could be a vital realization, I think, Mr. Naruhodo. Okay, he changed his testimony on number 5. So, let's see. Japan. But all this earlier stuff, this is... No, it's gotta be something... Yeah, that's Gregson's trunk, though. So we... Great Waterloo Hotel on the morning of Professor Mikotoba. I knew it! But they said that the border would check the luggage and... But if I remember correctly, when this photo was taken, I said, this is going to be a pivotal piece of evidence. Even though I couldn't see what was here, but now I see it in the bottom left-hand corner. It's gotta be. It's just gotta be. There's no possible way you could have moved Inspector Gregson's body, you say? I would say the opposite is true. And what's that supposed to mean? Far from being impossible for you to do, the transporting of Inspector Gregson's body back to Britain is something only you could do. What are you talking about, Ryunosuke? As well as being a judge, Mr. Jigoku is also Japan's Minister of Foreign Affairs. Which means he's exempt from having his luggage searched when he enters the country. We learned that when we first met you upon your arrival in London... Oh. See, this is what happens when you take a break in a game. You forget like little pieces of dialogue like this. Well, all those passport checks and luggage searches at the border took rather a lot of time. And there's the piece of luggage right there in plain sight. Just the developers of the game mocking the player, waving the piece of evidence in your face the whole time. I must say I'm very envious of your ministerial status. You didn't have to go through any of that, did you? You know, my old adage about murder mysteries, there are no non sequiturs. Everything they say is something to do with solving the murder, and here it is. You didn't have to go through that. It should have, like, I should have zeroed in on that as like an obvious clue. Why would he say that otherwise? Ah, I knew you were jealous. I presume you recall this, Judge Jigoku. God damn it. It's a photograph we took in the foyer of the hotel to mark the occasion. As the court will note, you have with you your large travel trunk. Large enough, in fact, to have a corpse inside. That's how the spindle got in there. That's how that crown got in there. Because Gregson was in the trunk. God damn it. Mr. Naruhodo, surely you're not suggesting... Don't call me Shirley. I'm afraid I am, yes. 3 days ago, when we were chatting innocently with the new arrivals from Japan in the hotel, the body of Inspector Gregson was just meters away from us, inside Judge Jigoku's trunk. Ugh! Clang, clang, clang. Order, order, order in the court! I'm skeptical, counsel. That's a grown man's body. That a grown man's body could fit inside even the largest travel trunk. It could. And it does. Because I happen to know that the witness himself, a man of considerable size, fits inside his trunk. And verifying that would, would be extremely simple. Verifying that would be extremely simple, wouldn't it, Judge Jigoku? Ugh. Gotcha. But inside his trunk, how horrifying. And after we'd spoken with you at the Great Waterloo Hotel, you had the opportunity to visit the apparent scene on Fresno Street, taking your trunk with you in a cab to deposit the inspector's body. I don't have to listen to this nonsense. Dr. Gori, the coroner who examined the body, has confirmed the possibility. She's acknowledged there are signs that steps may have been taken to disguise the true time of death. The onset of the body's decomposition would have been delayed by storing it in a refrigerator. Counsel, as I remember explaining yesterday, refrigerators of that requisite size are few and far between. Ah, yes, I'm sure they are, but one place they're certainly not found, or one place they're certainly found is on large ocean liners. Yeah, but how would he have gotten it to a refrigerator? Such ships are equipped with electrically refrigerated cold rooms to keep food fresh on their long sea voyages, and the SS Groose is no exception. Professor Mikotoba told me about it only yesterday. Well, Judge Jigoku? However much you prolong this debate, you can't eliminate the truth. All the evidence points to you being the killer. God damn, I would never have seen this coming. Ha 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 ha. Well, this is all very heartening. I can see that it was a wise move letting Asogi and you embark. I can see it was a wise move letting Asogi and you embark on this study tour. What are you talking about now? Logical reasoning, of course. All court proceedings will be built on logical reasoning in the new century. And I can see that you've both laid firm foundations for that already. Judge Shikoku, please stop diverting attention from the issue at hand. The defense has made an accusation against you. How do you respond? Respond? There's really no need for me to respond, is there? Why ever not? Because so far this is all conjecture. Because before you can even begin to answer the question of when the victim was killed, you must first establish one key fact. Where was the victim killed? It's quite logical. The actual scene of the crime? The prosecution's stance is unaltered. The killing took place on Fresno Street when the gunshot was heard. As the accused, Barack Van Zeeks shot the victim at point-blank range. Since no tangible evidence exists to disprove the prosecution's claim at this time, the defense's deductions amount to little more than an elaborate fairy tale. I'm afraid that's how the logical reasoning the British are known for really works, young stripling. The victim was shot in that little room on Fresno Street and died instantly. I'm afraid it's the prosecution's claim that's the only fairy tale here. How can you say that? Quite simply, because that claim directly contradicts a certain piece of evidence in our possession. It does? That's news to me. Very tantalizing, counsel. I think you had better explain yourself to the court, don't you? The prosecution claims that Inspector Gregson died instantly when he was shot at the scene on Fresno Street. But this evidence clearly contradicts that. I have no idea. Let's go one by one. Okay, Oh no, that's Clint Van Zeeks. That's not. I don't know. The Asogi papers can't be that. The official warrant card. Okay, let's look at the history again. Victim was shot at Little Room on Fresno Street and died instantly. Okay, so are we saying he didn't die instantly? Because I don't know. Is it the photo? I don't know. It's gotta be. Looks like he's leaking Kool-Aid. Yeah, I'm gonna go with it. A photograph of the victim in the very location you claim he wasn't killed? Yes, but the point is the posture of the body itself. It's curled up. If Inspector Gregson had been shot there in the room, it's out of the question that his body would have been curled up in a ball like that. I didn't even think of that. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but your logic is flawed. He could easily have adopted that fetal position. That's a funny way to spell fetal. He could have adopted that fetal position due to the pain of the shot, which subsequently proved fatal. Objection. I'm sorry to disappoint you, Judge Jigoku, but it's your logic that is flawed. What? According to this autopsy report, the victim died instantly. He would... Wait, let me... According to this... Okay. He would have felt no pain, much less have been able to draw himself into that position. Which begs the question of why the victim's body is curled up in that way. Though the answer should be abundantly clear by now. You're suggesting... The inspector's body took on that posture ahead of its arrival on Fresno Street, before it was coldly turned out on the floor from the inside of a large travel trunk. No. You're quite right. The shape of the body. It looks exactly as if it had been kept in a confined space. I'll be damned. They really put a lot of thought into this case and keeping the player from like figuring this out. Judge Jigoku, present your trunk for examination. There's got to be blood in the trunk. I believe it's very possible that it will contain traces of the victim's blood. Ugh. You are the killer. Present my trunk? I refuse. What? On what grounds? I'm the Minister of Foreign Affairs from the Empire of Japan. I shouldn't have to put up with this treatment just because of some stripling's baseless accusations. They're not baseless anymore. In other words, Judge Jigoku, there is blood in your trunk. I decline to answer that. As the Minister of Foreign Affairs, I have privilege... He just interrupted. I didn't even press the button on that. At this moment, you're not a government minister. You are a witness in a trial in Britain's highest court. Ugh. I don't care who you are or what your status outside this courtroom might be. You will not withhold information. Nothing is more important than the truth. Ugh. Clang, clang, clang. Order! Order in court! Well, Mr. Jigoku, what's it to be? You can't be serious. You did it? Have you no shame at all, Kazuma Asogi? What? Very well, I admit it. I did bring the inspector's body into this country. Inside my trunk, exactly as postulated by the defense. What? You... Dear God, outrageous! So it was you admit... No, I admit to nothing more than what I've said. Of killing the man, I certainly have no recollection. Really? What on earth is that cryptic statement supposed to mean? I merely disposed of the inspector's body, which was left in my cabin, in order to avoid unwanted attention. As the judicial assistant over there pointed out, I had no chance to throw it into the ocean. So I decided my only option was to bring it into Britain with me to dispose of it somewhere else. You can't still deny it. If you didn't do it, then who on earth did kill the man? As you know, there was one other person in my cabin that night. He had the opportunity. Ooh. And moreover, he'd already accepted a mission to take the inspector's life. Oh. That's right. Who else could it have been? It was you, Kazuma Asogi. You. Man, my wrists are starting to hurt just watching these guys pound on hard wood. I never thought you'd stoop to this, Seshiro Jigoku. I thought the controller died again. You've taken the words straight out of my mouth, Prosecutor Kazuma Asogi. Are they both in the dark? Was there someone else in that room? Oh, the game is experiencing a little slowdown here. I might have to... at the next break, I might have to restart the computer. I thought by leaving the body in my cabin, you could pin the... You thought by leaving the body in my cabin, you could pin the crime on me, did you? Oh, the controller is dead. Hang on. I think I have a faulty USB port on the PC. I'm gonna have to shuffle around some of the hardware that's plugged in. You thought by leaving the body in my cabin, you could pin the crime on me, did you? Well, the prosecution counsel has already admitted to visiting the witness's cabin on the night in question. Yes, on an assassination mission, no less. You wouldn't. So, what do you make of that, young stripling? You've heard my testimony now, and that's all I have to say on the matter. I'll admit to nothing more. Is it possible there's a third person? I don't believe this. Clang. Counsel for the defense. What is your position now? The court awaits your response to the witness's assertion. My response is to move to adjudication because clearly my client is innocent. The assertion that on the night in question, the victim's assailant was in fact Mr. Kazuma Asogi. Whatever, my role here is to set my client free, so why don't we just do that? This isn't the dead end it seems to be. The answer's right in front of me. It comes down to Jigoku or Kazuma. Both of them had the opportunity to kill Gregson, but only one of them did it. And I'm just a step away from proving who. Very well. The defense is ready to respond to the assertion put forth by Judge Jigoku. The idea that the victim's murder could have been committed by Prosecutor Asogi is, I'll just say, impossible. Judge Jigoku, let me remind you of something you said only a few minutes ago. You claimed that logical reasoning is the future of the judicial process. It is, no question. Well, logical reasoning can prove something here. Namely, that it would have been impossible for Prosecutor Asogi to commit the crime. What? Nani? Nani is what in Japanese. Don't ask me how I know that. I'm just a dork. The court will only accept an argument that is supported by compelling evidence. So present what you have, counsel. What proof is there that allegedly demonstrates the impossibility of Prosecutor Asogi's involvement? That's a good fucking question. Okay, one by one. Oh, what that? Ah, controller's gone nuts. Hang on. One of the sticks must have been out of the dead zone when I plugged it back in. Here we go. Okay. I don't know. Let's see. Was removed from the scene, but subsequently recovered by Gina. Yogi's involvement. I don't know. Well, I suppose we should see what this inspector's identification looks like inside. Did we ever go anywhere with this? Huh. This Scotland Yard insignia looks genuine to me. Identification number details are all correct as well. There's no doubt that this really is Inspector Gregson's identification. Nothing here. No, this is all from before. It's not going to be Clint's autopsy. It's not going to be the... No, it's not the... Nothing there. Evacuation drill itinerary. Following, all crew members are required to assemble on the main deck at 10 p.m. in order to review evacuation. Drill will take 20 minutes. Crew to resume duties as soon as the drill is over. I suppose that could be it. Not that. Not that. Okay, and once we go past that point, must have something to do with the crew members. Like, because he's in a totally different area of the ship, so he can't move around much without like passing the crew members. I guess?
Take that!
Take that? This itinerary for crew members of the SS Groose, my lord, this is conclusive proof. An itinerary? How does that prove anything? Good question. Judge Jikoku, the moment you acknowledge that you found the victim's body in your cabin, this itinerary suddenly became much more significant. What? Why? On the night in question, as always, a crewman sentry was on guard outside your cabin door. As long as he was there, nobody could have fired a shot inside the cabin. Absolutely, because it's inconceivable that the guard would have heard it and come to investigate. So that tells us that the crime must have taken place when the guard was elsewhere, and that narrows it down to 20 minutes just after 10 o'clock, as indicated on the itinerary. Yes, I see no flaw in your reasoning so far. Is it that he testified earlier that only Gregson was there? But the crucial point is, when the evacuation drill took place, the steamship had already put to sea from the port of Dunkirk. Ugh! Now, clearly the murder could only have been committed by someone who was aboard the vessel at the time. Wait, let me reread that. As indicated on the itinerary. But the crucial point is this. When the evacuation drill took place, the steamship had already... Okay. And was, did I miss something? Was, Sogi not on the ship during that time? He had to be, right? I thought he came back to England on the ship. Am I missing something? But Prosecutor Asogi stated in yesterday's proceedings, I didn't come to Great Britain to take anyone's life. So I left Gregson and disembarked the ship. Oh, I guess he did say that. I spent that night at a boarding house in the town and returned to England the following morning. Okay. Which I'm sure the court will agree is conclusive proof that Kazuma Sogi couldn't possibly have carried out the killing. Ugh! I don't remember that. Absolutely not. I don't accept that at all. What do you mean? The boy's just saying that to exonerate himself. We can't trust that he really disembarked the vessel. Obviously, after he left my cabin, he hid himself somewhere nearby on the ship. Just waiting for his chance to come back and finish the... Nope. No, that's out of the question. Isn't it, Kazuma? As the defense rightly recalls, I disembarked the vessel and spent the night in a boarding house in Dunkirk. And as I said yesterday, I signed my name in the accommodations registry. Oh! All extremely easy to verify and undeniable proof. Ugh, no! There's no escape this time. You can forget that you're a judge or a government minister. It's time you gave the court an honest answer as a common man. Ugh. You killed Inspector Tobias Gregson and transported his corpse back to Britain. Then you dumped the body in the room on Fresno Street and made it look as if the murder had happened there. And nobody saw you walk into that building, a Japanese man. That's what really happened, isn't it, Seshiro Goku? Jiko... God. Whoever you are. It was that damned... I didn't even get to finish reading that. Looking back now, my fate was decided that day. I was doomed already. Ah. Judge Smash. Jesus, it's over. My life is over. Jesus. A British assassin to eliminate a professor in Japan, a Japanese assassin to eliminate a detective in Britain. Both assassins will use diplomatic immunity to evade conviction and return safely to their homelands. Interesting. The assassin exchange arrived from Britain about 1 year ago. Though it was hardly a request, it was a demand. And for that, you decided to recruit Mr. Asogi? But things didn't go according to plan. Your chosen assassin never made it to Britain, and you found yourself unable to dispatch a replacement because I was already on my way to Britain at that time in Cosmo's place. And that left me with only one option for carrying out my obligation: to eliminate the mark myself, personally. Of course, there was but a simple opportunity for me to do that. The International Forensic Science Symposium, I presume. That's right. I decided it would be safest to carry out the plan before my arrival in Britain, so I enlisted the help of my British counterpart and made arrangements for a pretext that would take the inspector to Dunkirk. To lure the man in, he was given a sham mission by the Reaper. But what? Nani? The Reaper? But there's only one person who could have done that. The mastermind of the entire operation. The Reaper himself. Oh, that's how we're going to keep this thing going. We're back to accusing Van Zieks. God damn it. So, that means that the assassin exchange was all planned by the Reaper. I'm not at liberty to say anything about my British counterpart. Anyway, the inspector accepted the Reaper's mission and dutifully infiltrated my cabin on the steamship. But it was all a trap designed to lead him to France and his own death. Oh, how awful. It was past 9 o'clock when I returned to my cabin from the dining hall that evening. I didn't give him time to attack me. I choked him until he lost consciousness. But there was a guard just outside the door, so I left it at that for the time being. Even the slightest noise might have aroused suspicion, so I bided my time, waiting for the 20 minutes after 10 o'clock. I had intended to finish him by strangulation, but moments before I had the chance, he suddenly came around and went for me in a reckless move. Bang. I'd received the British issue gun 16 years earlier, being a member of the judiciary as a visiting student. I never imagined I'd have to use it for something like that. So the revolver belongs to you, does it? Then the victim was killed inside your cabin on the SS Groose, which begs the question of why you arranged for his body to be discovered in the room on Fresno Street, to mask the to mask where he was killed. The young judicial assistant over there has already answered that question. There was no way I could take the body up on deck to throw it over the side. That's precisely where all the crewmen were gathered for the evacuation drill. So before the first-class cabin sentries returned, I took the corpse to the refrigeration room. And then on arriving in Dover, you concealed the body in your trunk in order to smuggle it past the border police. How did he retrieve it from the refrigerator then? I knew I needed to take steps if the police were to be convinced when the body was found in London. In that case, you must have had intimate details of Inspector Gregson's intended schedule. Oh, that's right. How would he have known to deposit it there? Yes, my British counterpart sent me everything I needed to know. The inspector was due at Fresno Street at 5 o'clock that afternoon in order to meet a man by the name of Hugh Boone for whom he would take back his police identification. From whom he would take back. Ah, I decided that man would be the perfect person to set up as a culprit. So I took a hackney carriage over there with the body still in my trunk. That must have been just after we took this photograph with you at the hotel then. Yes, I wasn't expecting a welcoming committee. I was more than a little nervous. On Fresno Street, I spotted a young girl selling little firecrackers. Miss Venus, of course. I conceived of the candle trick there and then, so I donned a simple disguise and approached the girl to buy enough firecrackers to replicate a gunshot. What sort of disguise? For some reason, the inspector had a bright red hairpiece in his own traveling case, so I put that on, although I suspect I drew more attention to myself in that than I would have otherwise. The hairpiece we found at the scene, the inspector had it ready for the Red-Headed League investigation. I only arrived at the room at around 4:45, so I quickly placed the body on the floor, moved the notice board, and set up my little candle trick. I arranged it so the firecrackers would go off with a bang around 15 minutes later, so that Mr. Boone, who was due to arrive at 5, would walk straight into a trap. Except, at the last moment, I made a careless blunder. What was that? I imagine it was the bag of fish and chips. Ah! I didn't notice that it had fallen out of my overcoat pocket when I moved the body to the refrigeration room. I put it back into his pocket the following morning, but, well, it seems the warmth of the heated cabin had accelerated the decay of the fish. Anyway, that's everything. All the sordid details of what I did. Clang. I've heard enough. We've arrived at the truth about the murder of one of the country's most capable and respected police inspectors. The witness will be tried in the coming days. For a crime of such vile nature, you can expect the most severe penalty. You'll hang for this. An exchange of assassins. What a foolhardy idea. Mr. Jigoku, one last detail. One more thing. Who was your counterpart in Britain? Who was the mastermind behind the assassin exchange? Nothing you say now can make matters any worse for you. Just tell us. Enough! I've already told you that I cannot say. Even though as things stand, you may very well never set foot in your homeland again. What are you waiting for? Can't we get this over with now? It's finished. All of it. I'm finished. Clang. Well, if he's already facing death, why not just say who it is? Unless he just doesn't know. Then, in the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I now pronounce the findings of this court. This man before us has admitted to the willful murder of Tobias Gregson. Clang. Wait a minute. Sashiro Jigoku? It is the opinion of this court that you should be found guilty. Okay, so that doesn't apply to our client. Whew. And may I remind all those present of the strict confidentiality demanded by this closed court. That's not much of a trial. They just declared him guilty on the spot. He doesn't get representation. That's kind of, Moments ago, Mr. Jigoku signed a written confession, admitting to the murder of Inspector Gregson and the subsequent conveyance of the body. In short, the defendant's innocence has therefore been established beyond doubt. Don't you dare. Oh, wonderful. Well done, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes, thank you. Is something wrong? I'm just a little troubled by his silence. The true identity of the Reaper of the Bailey and this extraordinary assassin exchange. We do remain in the dark about these mysteries. However, insofar as the indictment brought against the defendant in this trial, we have reached a conclusion. I have every intention of pursuing both mysteries. As a prosecutor. Clang. As you wish. Now, for the formal adjudication, I hereby declare the defendant, Brock Van Zieks.
Objection!
Oh, no! You little bitch. The prosecution calls for adjudication to be deferred. Counsel? The accused's innocence has been fully established. The accused's innocence hasn't been fully established at all, and therefore it would be wrong to deliver a verdict at this time. That is the prosecution's unwavering position. What? Nani? But Judge Jigoku has already confessed. Nevertheless, Brock Van Zieks has committed crimes for which he must be punished. Well, it would appear you have information that the court needs to hear, Prosecutor Asogi. Certainly, the murder of Inspector Gregson was actually carried out by Sashiro Jigoku. But it's clear from the witness's testimony that he was coerced into complying with the plot. Into this sick, merciless assassin exchange. That may be true, but... So what I want to know is, who coerced Jigoku? Who was pulling the strings? The victim went to France, having been ordered on a mission for the Reaper only to be murdered. In other words, the mastermind behind the assassination exchange is someone in a position to give such an order. As we've already established, the Reaper himself... I always think that he's going to trail off into another clause of the sentence. Well, certainly that would appear to follow. The prosecution hereby formally accuses the man in the dock, Brock Van Zieks, of being the Reaper of the Bailey, and furthermore, I'm going to prove his guilt beyond all reasonable doubt. What? What? Jesus. Clang, 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 clang. Order, order, order! The Reaper of the Bailey is a long-standing mystery, Counsel. Are you suggesting you have some new information with which to build a case? Scotland Yard has already investigated Lord Van Zieks very thoroughly in that regard, and they found no evidence whatsoever to substantiate the claim that he is the Reaper of the Bailey. Perhaps, but circumstances have now changed. What do you mean? It's already been established that the assassin exchange was negotiated with Jigoku by the Reaper himself, which means we now have a new line of questioning by which to identify definitively the man's identity. That is the prosecution's intention here. I must say I'm surprised by quite how tenacious you appear to want to besmirch my name. You are guilty of an unforgivable crime, Lord Van Zieks. Ow. I will bring you to justice for it, whatever it takes. That explains Cosmo's silence before. He'll stop at nothing to finish what Lord Van Zieks unwittingly started 10 years ago. Clang. Very well, whilst it's extremely irregular, I will, on this occasion, grant the prosecution further opportunity for witness testimony. The defendant will disclose any and all involvement he has had with the Reaper and the Assassin exchange. I thank you, my lord, for guiding the court so wisely. I hereby declare this court to be in session for a supplementary hearing. This is gonna get nuts, I can already tell. Pray turn a blind eye to the discourtesy as I verify that this vile and unremitted accusation hasn't soured the contents of my hallowed chalice. Lord Van Zieks, I first had to suffer the pseudonym of the Reaper 10 years ago now. And ever since that time, I've endured the weight of implied guilt that's gone with it. So I welcome the chance to testify now and crush those allegations once and for all. Good. Then let justice decide, Lord Van Zieks. The prosecution seeks to begin building its case by calling the accused to the stand as the primary witness, in order that he may answer the accusation brought by the prosecution that he is the Reaper of the Bailey. And what say the defense? Putting the defendant in the witness stand can be extremely dangerous, and Cosmo is so emotional at the moment, he's not thinking logically. That it's the perfect time to do it. You're right that he's not himself. But I knew it would be like this. And I came here today determined to face him through whatever might arise, as a lawyer and as his friend. Then that's what we must do. The defense has no objection, my lord. Clang. Very well. Defendant, you will take the witness stand and give formal testimony on the subject of your involvement with the Reaper and the Assassin exchange. No involvement at all, dummy. I mean, as you wish, my lord. The Reaper and the Assassin exchange. I have never taken the life of another, nor have I instructed another to kill. I've been investigating the truth behind the Reaper for years, and I was aware of Gregson's involvement. That's the reason why I went to Fresno Street that day, and how I came to discover the body. The point is, no common thread exists between myself, Gregson, and Dr. Wilson. Clearly, therefore, there's no reason to suspect me of being behind the assassin exchange. So you deny all accusations by the prosecution, both that you are the Reaper of the Bailey and that you masterminded the assassin exchange. I acknowledge that the public at large believes me to be the Reaper. However, that's a fallacy which I alone am in position to forswear. Naturally, the prosecution believes the testimony just given by the accused is to be untrue. Ryunosuke Naruhodo. Yes? Let me ask you, why are you here? What really brings you to this courtroom? Well, I'm hired by the defendant. I'm his advocate. A desire to uncover the truth. Even if the truth proves your client to be guilty? from all my experience in this courtroom, I've come to realize something. The truth can't be hidden. Sooner or later, it will come out. So it's always my intention to work with my client in pursuit of the truth. I want you to remember what you just said. Clang. Enough dilatory chatter. Counsel for the defense, proceed to cross-examine the witness. Ah, yes, my lord. I know exactly what you're thinking, Kazuma. I know you're just waiting to point it out. The contradiction you're convinced lies somewhere within this man's testimony. Okay. I don't even know what I'm looking for here. Let's go. I've never taken a life of another, nor have instructed how to kill. So you're not what the general public refers to as the infamous Reaper of the Bailey? Exactly. Don't imagine for a moment that the court will be satisfied with a one-word answer on this. I realize that. If you're intending to comment on every sentence, this could take a while, Kazuma. Didn't you find it disturbing, though, that one by one defendants who'd been acquitted after your unsuccessful prosecution were killed? Let me answer that question by posing another. If one by one defendants who'd been acquitted after your successful defense were killed, would you find that disturbing? Disturbing? I couldn't possibly say how that would make me feel with a one-word answer like that. Exactly. Well, that told me. But even though I'm not the Reaper, that doesn't mean I ignored all the hearsay. I've been investigating the truth behind the Reaper for years, and I was aware of Gregson's involvement. You say for years. How long exactly? Since the very first time the Reaper's influence was felt in this courtroom. 10 years ago now. And your investigations led somehow to Inspector Gregson, you're saying? I didn't want to believe it. He was a personal acquaintance. We'd worked on cases together in the past. A friend. A friend, even? It felt like a betrayal, but I demanded permission to search his office at Scotland Yard without his knowledge. Which is when you found his secret notebook, is it? It's when I first learned of the location he'd noted only as Groose and the appointment at 5 p.m. on the 31st. Though I didn't know the significance of those details at the time. So now we're at the nub of the matter. As it turns out, the significance for me personally was very unfortunate. See, that's the reason why I went to Fresno Street that day and how I came to discover the body. But why did you go to that specific location? I thought if it was the Reaper's headquarters, then by turning up there at 5 o'clock, I would catch whoever was involved red-handed. Sadly, all that was awaiting me was the inspector's corpse. Yes, even though it wasn't designed for you, you walked straight into the trap set by Jigoku. Exactly. Jigoku had intended to implicate Hugh Boone. But unhappily for me, I arrived at the scene first. Huh, a ridiculously careless blunder. Moved on to just throwing insults around, I see then, Kazuma. Think what you will, it doesn't change the truth. Point is, no common thread exists between myself, Gregson, and Dr. Wilson. Okay, this one's just shouting out at me that this is the Because if we look at this, clearly, therefore, there's no reason. Okay, either of these two sentences. Let's see what we got. Okay, not that. Let's look. No, that has nothing. That's not gonna be it. That's not gonna be it. Dr. John H. Wilson. It's signed by Dr. Autopsy report. Credit to Inspector Gregson for petitioning so doggedly for the autopsy procedure. That's it.
Objection.
Objection. What is this? An autopsy report? Wait, this is 10 years old. From the autopsy of Lord Clint Van Zeeks. What? My brother's autopsy report? I'm pleased to see the defense doesn't intend to run from the undeniable truth. Order in the court. What reason do you have for presenting a 10-year-old autopsy report here, counsel? This, the autopsy report of the professor's final victim, is an Wait, what did he say? This is the autopsy report of the professor's... the professor's final victim. Okay, I forget we're talking about two different... well, supposedly two different characters. The professor is also the Reaper. Obviously. It is an undeniable link between Inspector Gregson, Dr. Wilson, and the defendant. Not that accursed name again, the professor. I've personally researched all of the court records relating to that case. I know that at the time, autopsy was considered sacrilege to the victim's souls. And for a member of the aristocracy like Lord Clint Van Zeeks, it was unthinkable. But someone implored the powers that be to allow the autopsy to go ahead. Inspector Gregson. See, I don't believe this at all, that Inspector Gregson had anything to do with the Reaper. I think he's a good guy. Was never involved. He declared that he was certain he would obtain conclusive proof from the procedure. And it was Dr. Wilson who conducted the autopsy. His signature is clearly visible on the document. As promised by Gregson, the autopsy did indeed produce evidence. Evidence that conclusively proved Genshin Asogi was guilty of the murders. In my brother's dying moments, he mustered all his remaining strength to leave that vital clue behind. Indeed, that was the key to indicting the professor for his crimes and the conclusive evidence that convicted him. It enabled Lord Van Zeeks to avenge his brother's senseless death with a marvelous victory in court. A marvelous victory, was it? I wonder if that's really true. What? Could the same be said if it turned out that the key piece of evidence in question was in fact fabricated? If the inspector, the coroner, and the prosecutor all colluded together to cast an innocent Japanese man as a mass murderer and send him to his death? That's outrageous. And now, 10 years later, for some reason, the secret has been threatened and needs protecting. Which is why the inspector and the coroner had to be silenced, isn't it? By someone in power in Japan and in Britain, using the two killers recruited for the assassin exchange. Oh, that's right, the original coroner got killed. Order! Order at once! 10 years ago, my father was convicted in this very courtroom as a mass murderer, to be sentenced to death. But it was all a sham, and I swore to myself that I'd prove it. It is why I had to come to Britain, whatever the cost. You'll have to forgive me if I feel compelled to toast this vengeful Nipponese tenacity of purpose here. However, he who fails to quash his emotions in the courtroom has failed as a lawyer. That's right. I mean, come on, Kazuma, you know this won't wash. You're claiming your father was misrepresented in a trial that took place a whole decade ago? You must see that without evidence, that's nothing more than a wild accusation. As it happens, I have evidence. Nani? As the court has heard, I crossed the channel to France with Gregson on the 31st. I went with him on the pretext of being the assassin recruited to kill Seshiro Jigoku. But my true intentions were to make the inspector tell me the truth. What truth? The truth about the evidence, and he acknowledged what I'd already deduced. There's a closely guarded secret about what went on in that autopsy 10 years ago. What? A secret? I know nothing of any secret. While we waited for my supposed mark in Jigoku's cabin, I drew my clan's illustrious sword, Karuma, before the inspector's eyes. He very quickly understood what my true motive was. Right, I see. You're that Osogi's young lad, are you? And what? You're gonna cut me down with that thing, is that it? That will very much depend on the answers you give to my questions. I want to know what really happened 10 years ago. The truth, that's all. Before we get into it, let me make one thing clear. I still believe your father was the professor. There's no doubt in my mind. But unfortunately back then, we didn't have the evidence we needed to make the crime stick. So you admit it then? The evidence used in my father's trial was fabricated? It was for the good of the country. Anyway, I was just following orders. Orders? What exactly did you do? Speak! I'm not saying another word. Even if your life depends on it? That's right. Even then. Sing. So that's when the tip of the sword broke. Ah. Oh, Kazuma. If the results of Clint Van Zeek's autopsy were fabricated, then the investigating officer Gregson and the lead coroner Wilson must have known about it. And they can only have been ordered to prevent let's start over. And they can only have been ordered to pervert the course of justice in that way by one man. The man leading the case for the prosecution, Barack Van Zeeks. In other words, the defendant did have cause to organize this exchange of assassins. Exactly. And as was established earlier, it has to have been the Reaper himself who liaised... The Reaper himself who liaised with Jigoku in Japan to arrange the exchange. Ugh. Ow. So it follows that the Reaper's true identity can only be that of the man who stands accused in this courtroom today, Barack Van Zeeks. Guilty. Objection. Kazuma Asogi. What? What you've just told the court, are you absolutely certain of your facts? Did Gregson really fabricate evidence for the trial 10 years ago? I heard it with my own ears. His shameful admission. In that case, I know. The name of the Reaper. What? What? Lord Van Zeeks. I gave no such orders. I know that for certain. Which narrows down the remaining possibilities to one. Is he gonna actually call it out? Lord Van Zeeks isn't the one behind all this. Then yes, there is only one other person who could have done something like that. I believe I know who it is too. I just had a feeling this name was going to come up. The true identity of the infamous Reaper of the Bailey is... Is this really where we're gonna... Yeah, it's gotta be. It's just gotta be. Take that. The only person who could have arranged the assassin exchange and manipulated the autopsy results is the Lord Chief Justice himself, Lord Mael Strongheart. What? Lord Strongheart? Yes, it's true that 10 years ago, the defendant handled the prosecution of the professor in court. And he only took over the case after his brother, Lord Clint Van Zeeks, had been killed. I can only assume that this is the most inappropriate joke in British judicial history. Well, Lord Van Zeeks, 10 years ago, I was very new to my profession, but I had a burning desire to avenge my brother's death, so I pleaded for control of the case. The investigation to that point, the supplication of the lords to allow my brother's corpse to be examined, all the evidence I was given, the autopsy reports, it all came from you. I've spent my life since then believing I was in your debt for the way you stood aside and let me handle the trial. But I see now, I was very much mistaken. It was a huge influential force that caused the inspector and the coroner to break the law 10 years ago. And that same force was still felt a decade later on the other side of the world by Seshiro Jigoku. Lord Strongheart, everything falls into place when we recognize that you are the Reaper of the Bailey. You're not pointing at Lord Strongheart. The court awaits your response, my lord. This may very well go down in British judicial history, but I assure you, it is no joke. Consider this a formal accusal by the defense. It doesn't warrant a response. A formal accusal? Don't be absurd. The defense's claims are utter nonsense, a wild fantasy at best. You're not going to defend yourself? You claim there was some wrongdoing with Lord Clint Van Zeek's autopsy? That's utterly untrue. Objection. But I heard it from Gregson's own lips. He admitted to it. And where is your evidence? What? Gregson's dead now, unless you were thinking of summoning a ghost to the stand. You mean to say? I forget how the system works in your little backwater country, but in the courts of the British Empire, without evidence there is no case. I have no intention of entertaining some wild fantasy that can't possibly be substantiated by anyone or anything. Ugh. Clang, 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 clang. Order! Order in the court! Following Inspector Gregson's murder, and in the light of Dr. Wilson's death as well, there's really no one left who could testify about the events of 10 years ago, is there? So that was the real purpose of the assassin exchange. Yeah, to silence them both. This court has no business raking over the coals of a case that was concluded a decade ago. The accusal brought by the prosecution and the defense is categorically denied. I take it there are no objections? Kazuma. He's more or less waited his whole life for this moment. Is there really nothing else we can do now? Is there no other avenue we can go down in pursuit of the truth about what happened all those years ago? If only there was someone who could testify about Clint Van Zeek's autopsy. Sure. He's gone to extraordinary lengths to cover his tracks. Even so far as dispatching an assassin all the way to Japan to ensure Dr. Wilson's silence. And Dr. Scythe won't say anything against Strongheart. But there's still one ray of hope. Objection. Actually, there is one person. One person who could still testify about that autopsy. Don't be ridiculous. There's no one left. Who, Ryunosuke? Who? Tell me. Kazuma, Please, this trial can't end. Not yet. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for the truth. The person the defense would like to call to the stand to testify about the autopsy of Lord Van Zeek's is, I don't know. That's right. That's right. He knew Dr. Wilson. It's gotta be him. Heaven help us. Another Japanese. Is everyone racist? An expert in forensic medicine, my lord, Professor Yujin Mikotoba, 16 years ago, he came to London with Seshiro Jigoku and Genshin Asogi as a visiting student. And what could his testimony possibly tell us? Professor Mikotoba was the primary assistant during the autopsy in question. He was also the person who actually penned the report. Incorrect. That autopsy was carried out by the coroner, Dr. Wilson. The report carries his signature. It was the primary assistant's duty to keep a written record of the coroner's work during the procedure. In actual fact, the coroner merely read over the report at the end and signed it. In other words, Professor Mikotoba witnessed the entire autopsy from start to finish. The defense demands that Professor Mikotoba be summoned as a witness as a matter of urgency. Whatever really happened in that autopsy laboratory 10 years ago is something only he can tell us. Clang. Denied. The defense's demand is denied. What? But Professor Mikotoba is in London at this very moment. We could summon him to the stand in minutes. No, of course he's not going to agree to it. Strongheart has no intention of summoning anyone who knows. He's too concerned about protecting himself. Prosecutor Asogi, let me refresh your memory, as you seem to have forgotten the prosecution's stance. Only minutes ago, you accused the defendant of being the Reaper and of masterminding the assassin exchange. He can move to dismiss, although you probably won't grant it. I did, yes. So present your evidence for those claims and make your case complete. At this time, I don't have the requisite evidence, but that's exactly why we need witness testimony. The professor case is closed. There are no clues in the distant past that will bolster your argument today. I'm afraid to say, Prosecutor Asogi, that you would appear to be possessed by the spirit of your late homicidal father. Clang. Now, as I stated earlier, this court has already reached a conclusion with respect to the matter at hand. Inspector Gregson was murdered by Japanese Supreme Court Judge Seishiro Jigoku. As for any hidden circumstances that may exist, they will be investigated in due course by the proper authorities. Objection. But we all know what will happen. That'll just give the mastermind of the whole venture time to cover his tracks again. By which you mean me. Yes. Your punishment for this contemptible behavior will be decided at a later date. As for you, Professor Asogi, you will be reprimanded. You will be remanded following these proceedings. Willingly, I trust, since you gave your word. Ugh. This futile game of revenge is over, young Master Asogi. No, no, no! I was so close. Damn it all to hell. Playing. That will be all. I hereby declare this trial to be over. Court is hold it. Who said? Ah, there he is. But Mr. Sholmes. This is no place for amateur detection, Mr. Sholmes. May I remind you that these proceedings are closed to the general public? You will leave this courtroom at once. Objection. Oh, objection. Mr. Sholmes was instrumental in the apprehension of Seishiro Jigoku before he fled from Europe. The court should hear what he has to say. Lord Mayor Strongheart, it's imperative that you refrain from bringing this trial to an end at this stage. Is it really? And why would that be? You need only recall your own words from the opening of the trial to answer that question, if I may. We will stop at nothing to uncover the whole truth behind these disturbing findings. Surely you can't be... that... Wait a minute, I gotta reread that. Surely it can't be that the shock of being accused of being the Reaper of the Bailey yourself has erased that from your memory, can it? It cannot, and don't call me Shirley. The whole truth, sir, has already been uncovered. It would seem that we have a great many important members of the judiciary present here today. I put it to you, my dear fellows, should the trial end at this juncture? After all, why have you been invited to attend? To nod along to the prevarications of your superiors? That was a big word I just tackled there. Order! Order in the court! It seems to me that we stand before a door that leads to a new era of legal practices. A door that is ajar. Let us emerge from the shadows of the Reaper. The shadows of the Reaper's decade-long ascendancy. For you, and you alone, my dear fellows, have the power to push that door open now. The auditioners in the gallery have no right to express an opinion on court proceedings. Silence! He's right. The judge has absolute authority here. Yes, if he calls the trial to an end, it must end. Will it really do? Since dark things occurring behind the scenes. Dark things indeed. There's a single person here present who can I didn't even get to read that. But what's... Trial should go on. Summon the witness! That's right. We need to clear this up before that young Japanese... I didn't even get to finish. My lord, you assured those present that you would uncover the whole truth here. Vindicate yourself. Truth is the whole... nothing but the truth. That's the very foundation of British law. A toast to my dependable colleagues in the gallery. On with the trial! On with the trial! Testify! 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 Well, my lord, you hear the voice of British justice, I take it. I think you'll find it will be rather awkward to silence. Clang. Guilty. The court will recess briefly while I shit my pants. I have no intention of shrinking from these allegations. Ah. Bailiff, arrange for the subpoena of the witness at once. Okay. As soon as the gentleman arrives at the courtroom, we shall reconvene. A recess won't be necessary, my lord. Pardon. Mikotoba is a close friend of mine. He accompanied me today and is waiting in the antechamber as we speak. I do believe he's been enjoying a little trip down memory lane, in fact. What? Professor Mikotoba is here in this courtroom? In this courthouse? Mr. Sholmes, you didn't know this would happen, did you? My dear fellow, no one is in a better position to answer that question than you, Shirley. Told you not to call me Shirley. I wasn't just asking for the fun of it, you know. Well, I must thank you for your assistance in the matter, Mr. Sholmes. And the kitty's here. What do you want? What are you making noise for? However, you are of no further use here. Kindly leave the courtroom at once. But of course, in truth, I find myself rather busy now as a result of these developments. Mr. Naruhodo. Ah, yes. What do you want? I trust you have Iris's little lucky charm with you. Absolutely. It's still in my pocket. She sends her regards and a reminder. You find yourself at a dead end, the ears are at your disposal. Just one tug, if you please. Oh, of course. In that case, the trial will continue without delay. Bailiff, show the witness to the stand. So it's Lord Strongheart. He's the Reaper of the Bailey. Where exactly is this trial going to take me, I wonder? Just how deep am I about to be plunged into the blackness of the abyss? Well, I'm ready. I'm ready to head into the heart of this maelstrom and confront whatever horrors it tries to drown me under. To be continued. Good, I need a little break. This is going to be about the autopsy. So, witness, please state your name and occupation for the court. Yujin Mikotoba, lecturer in forensic medicine at the Imperial Yume University in Tokyo, Japan. And she's got nothing to say. And Professor Mikotoba, the young lady beside you is... Ah, this is Dr. Maria Gori, Scotland Yard's practicing coroner, the daughter of Dr. Scythe, I understand. Last time I said that Dr. Scythe was no longer with us, I forgot she actually committed the murder in the third case in the game. It wasn't discovered until the very end, and it was kind of something I didn't see coming. So I actually just totally forgot about that. So she's not dead; she's just in jail. Yes, Dr. Scythe. I'm afraid I can't tell you why she's here. She just appeared. And she's staring at me. You summoned this strange Japanese man as a witness to that autopsy. But you don't summon Mama. That makes no sense. She was there too. Creepy. That's about the size of it. I've had her eyes boring into the side of my cheek constantly whilst I was in the antechamber too. Poor man. The idea of it's making me shudder. The revelations about Dr. Scythe that came to light some days ago defiled the reputation of the entire judiciary. She was therefore deemed unfit to appear as a witness in today's proceedings. The Ministry of Justice's decision on that is final. Well, we wouldn't want any more perjury to be committed, would we? The Ministry of Justice? Some questionable strings are being pulled, I think. Clang. I remember you, Dr. Mikotoba. But I certainly never expected to be meeting you under these circumstances. Yes, it's been a long while, Lord Strongheart. The prosecution understands that you were a visiting student of forensic science in London until 10 years ago. That's right. I studied under Dr. Wilson at St. Siner's. So you were present at the autopsy of my brother, Lord Clint Van Zeeks. I was, yes. I assisted Dr. Wilson with the entire procedure. Mama is far more skilled than any Japanese man. Jesus, these people are racist. Well, Dr. Wilson asked me to be his primary assistant on that occasion. And this autopsy report was actually penned by you, I believe. Yes, I noted all the doctor's findings, and when we were done, he read through the document and signed it. Poor Mama. As secondary assistant, she wouldn't have had such a good view of all the innards. Ew. So, Professor, do you remember Inspector Gregson? Yes, of course. If it wasn't for his insistence, Lord Van Zeek's autopsy would never have happened. But he was absolutely convinced that it would reveal decisive evidence against Genshin, you see. So Lord Strongheart had to entreat the nobility to allow it to take place. Do correct me if I'm wrong, my lord. It was as a result of that autopsy that a mass murderer was apprehended and justice was done. But Gregson admitted it before he was killed. He admitted that the results of the autopsy were fabricated. You were there at the time, so you must testify. You have an obligation to tell the truth about what really went on. Absolutely. That's precisely why I'm here. And that's why I'm here too. Clang. Very well, then. You will give your formal testimony now, witness. But before you begin, a word of warning. Oh. You will state truthfully and accurately what you saw and what you heard at the time. I wouldn't dream of doing otherwise, my lord. The moment your testimony verges on supposition, I will expel you from my courtroom. Remember that. Alright, the autopsy of Clint Van Zieks. From my own observations, I couldn't say there was any indication of the autopsy results having been fabricated. Death resulted from a wound made by a Western-style sword, transfixing the heart. That I found a little strange. There were no other signs of internal injury, nothing questionable at all. It was just that beautiful but dangerous piece of evidence removed from the man's stomach. Presumed to have been swallowed by the victim as a way of posthumously identifying his assailant. Interesting. No indication? Nothing to suggest fabrication? Professor Mikotoba, are you certain about that? Well, nothing that I could positively identify as such, much less swear in a testimony. Ugh. Ah! Well, that clears things up nicely. Oh, you bastard. The only fabrication here, Asogi, has come from you. What? Nani? You claim the inspector confessed just before his death, but that is the fabrication. No, he freely acknowledged it. I swear he did. Don't swear. It sounds like shit. Freely? With the tip of a sword at his throat? The man was clearly at his wit's end. The court will give no credence to this confession that was uttered in obvious desperation. Quite simply, there was nothing questionable about the investigation of Lord Clint Van Zieks' death. And with this testimony, we have, without question, uncovered the whole truth of the matter. If I may, my lord, there was most certainly something questionable about it. And the whole truth does rather elude us, I feel. I beg your pardon? Well, you're obviously aware of the facts of the case. All four of the prosecutor's previous victims died when an enormous beast was set upon them that ripped out their throats. Oh, such horrifying crimes. The Hound of the Baskervilles. But curiously, the killer's last victim, Lord Van Zieks, Clint Van Zieks that is, suffered a different fate. Yes, you're right. He was stabbed through the heart with a sword. Clang. That's enough. I believe I warned you about this, witness. I promised to curtail your testimony as soon as it entered the realms of supposition and speculation. Very well, my lord. In that case, the defense will pursue a conclusion to this during the cross-examination. What? I have the right to cross-examine every witness after the testimony. And I fully intend to exercise that right. Ryunosuke. I'm afraid that even the presiding judge has no authority to contravene the letter of the law, as I'm sure every member of the judiciary present in the gallery would agree. Robble, robble, robble. Robble, robble, robble. Clang. Very well. You may begin, counsel. However, the moment your argument strays from the established facts, I will not hesitate to bring the cross-examination to an end. Proceed with caution. Yes, my lord. Okay, the autopsy of Clint Van Zieks. From my own observations, I couldn't say that there was any indication of the autopsy results having been fabricated. Hold it! Hold it right there. You couldn't say? No, sadly not. But then you couldn't say there wasn't any indication either, could you? No, true, I couldn't. I was at Dr. Wilson's side as he performed the procedure, recording what he did. But at times, of course, he instructed me to fetch implements and such like. Whilst I was away from the operating table, obviously I could have missed something. And at those times, what was the secondary assistant doing? Following the Japanese man's orders to adjust the lighting or pass him implements. But that doesn't mean Mama wasn't a vital part of the team. Quite, yes. So would you kindly refrain from staring at my cheek like that? You're creepy. Professor Mikotoba, think. Was there nothing at all that seemed out of place? Well, yes, there was, as a matter of fact. Death resulted from a wound made by a Western-style sword transfixing the heart. That I found a little strange. Hold it. All of the previous 4 killings attributed to the professor... Wait, did I read that right? Come on, stop. Okay. Oh, in all of the previous 4 killings attributed to the professor, the victims were killed by an enormous dog, I believe. Their throats were, well, mauled. Correct. And yet Lord Van Zieks was stabbed. Ah, do you mean to say you think Lord Clint Van Zieks may not, in fact, have been one of the professor's victims? Clang. There is no basis on which to doubt the findings of the investigations carried out at the time. But Genshin Asogi confessed to all of his crimes upon his arrest. He admitted to having taken the lives of all 5 members of the aristocracy. Ugh. Yet the beast that was used to carry out the killings was never identified. No evidence was found to suggest that Genshin had ever kept a dog. A true hound of hell. There were no other signs of internal injury, nothing questionable at all. Hold it right there. But, you weren't actually present at the autopsy yourself, were you, Dr. Gory? Does that matter? Well, yeah, it kind of does. Well, I just wonder how useful your testimony can be in that case, really. I mean, it would be difficult. It would be different if your mother, Dr. Scythe, were in the stand, but I've read all the paperwork about the case, and Mama told me the story countless times. As you do when you're raising a daughter, you tell her about autopsies. The statement I just made is exactly what's written in the autopsy report. And what do we need you here for? Just give us the report. I did confirm that myself at the time, it's true. Beside the stab wound, there were no other signs of internal trauma. I see. Mama told me all about it. Oh? She said there was nothing of note internally. But they did find an amazing piece of evidence. Something unbelievable. Unbelievable? What do you mean? Come on, Dr. Gory. What was it? It was just that beautiful but dangerous piece of evidence removed from the man's stomach. Oh, come on, just tell me. What exactly was it, though? What does beautiful but dangerous mean? Well, it was sparkly and round with a hole, as if it might slip over a finger, perhaps. It was a ring belonging to Genshin Asogi. But my father's ring was inside the victim's stomach? At the time, Genshin wore a large ring on the digitus quartus of his left hand, the fourth, or ring finger. I didn't know that was the name of the ring finger. I'd understood it was some sort of keepsake. When my father left Japan for London 16 years ago, I was 8 years old, but I remember that ring. You do? My father's possessions were sent to our family home in Japan after his death, but the ring wasn't among them. Obviously not. It was a key piece of evidence. It remains under lock and key in the stores at Scotland Yard to this day. After the autopsy, Genshin was summoned by the police to check for the presence of his ring. It wasn't on his hand, of course. Moreover, there were deep abrasions on his finger where it had been pulled off. What kind of abrasions? They arrested the man there and then, right before my eyes. How could they? I brought the ring along with me today. What? Nani? Here it is, a bit dusty from years in the stores. Good gracious, yes, that's it. I haven't seen that in 10 long years. And that was found inside the victim's stomach? Yes, I'm afraid so. You hesitated there, Professor Mikotoba. Should we read something into that? It's just that, thinking back now, I didn't actually witness the moment it was extracted from the victim's body. Oh my, really? At that precise moment, Dr. Wilson had asked me to fetch him a new scalpel, you see. Clang. Dr. Gory, the removal of historic evidence from the stores requires my consent, does it not? However it came to be here, the court cannot deny that this is crucial evidence for today's proceedings. Very well, you may submit it. Mr. Sogi's ring has been entered into the court record. Alright. Not the sort of ring normally seen in Japan. They almost look like claws protecting that jewel. We must examine it very carefully, Mr. Naruhodo. Very carefully indeed. Alright. Presumed to have been swallowed by the victim as a way of posthumously identifying his assailant. Okay, before we cross-examine him, we're gonna have a look at this ring. These fat claws are doing a good job protecting the equally fat gemstone in the middle of this ring. Yes, if you were clumsy, you could give yourself a rather nasty cut on them, I should think. Ow! Now my finger's bleeding. The claws really are sharp. Oh my, that was very quick clumsiness, Mr. Naruhodo, even for you. Ugh! Who would make such a dangerous ring? You couldn't swallow it without doing yourself some fairly serious damage, surely. Don't call me Shirley. A sticky mochi bun of about the size would go down much better, with some red bean paste in the middle. Someone as clumsy as me would probably manage to choke on it somehow. Okay, is there anything else about this ring we need to take a look at? Doesn't appear so. I'm not seeing any. Just want to make sure. Okay. Okay, I presume it was swallowed by the victim. Ooh. Yeah, I think we got a match here. Hold it.
Objection.
Objection. The court has heard that the ring was extracted from the victim's stomach, but you didn't actually see it being removed, did you, Professor Mikotoba? That's right. As I said in my testimony before, at that moment I was fetching a replacement scalpel that Dr. Wilson had requested. In other words, you can neither confirm nor deny whether this ring in fact really came from the victim's stomach or not. What are you suggesting, counsel? Ow. That ring was never in the victim's stomach to begin with. It's entirely feasible that Dr. Wilson fabricated that detail about the autopsy. What are you saying? That Dr. Wilson? That Dr. Wilson was in possession of the ring in advance after it was somehow stolen from Mr. Asogi. And he produced it during the procedure, pretending to have found it there and then in the victim's stomach.
Objection!
Objection. Supposition at best. What possible evidence do you have to support such a rash claim? The evidence, right here. That's the autopsy report. It's explicit in that report, counsel. Other than the ring, nothing unusual was noted internally. So I'm not sure how you intend to prove your point. You've already done it for me, my lord. The lack of internal injury says it all. What? To swallow a ring of this size would require considerable effort and determination. And in addition to its size, there are very sharp claws surrounding the gemstone to contend with. My brother was a determined man, and on the brink of death, even more so, I'm sure. He would have stopped at nothing to ensure that evil killer was brought to justice. But if he really had swallowed the enormous ring, it's inconceivable that no traces of its passage down his throat would have remained as internal trauma. That no traces would have remained. Okay. No. And and there you've arrived at the sticking point. That's precisely why I had my doubts about the findings myself 10 years ago. Then why didn't you say something at the time? I did. I still remember the conversation I had with Dr. Wilson in the laboratory that day. Look at this! Now this is a very curious thing to find in a man's stomach, wouldn't you say? But isn't that rather peculiar, Dr. Wilson? What's that now, Mikotoba? Well, if he swallowed a ring of that size, with those sharp metal claws that it has, surely you'd expect to see damage on the throat, to the throat and the esophagus, torn mucous membranes, at the very least. Don't call me Shirley. Dr. Mikotoba, may I remind you that I have vastly more experience than you. I'm terribly sorry. I can think of plenty of ways to explain why no injuries would be seen. No, let's say this. The victim would appear to have ingested the item as evidence to identify his assailant. Go ahead, write it down. So I was right. Dr. Wilson deliberately fabricated the results of the autopsy to implicate my father. Pling. I'm disappointed, counsel. That argument is nothing more than speculation. Out, all of you. Nani? Dr. Wilson was Britain's leading authority on forensic science and autopsy work. There is no scientific basis on which to doubt the man's expert opinion. There is cause to suspect that he forged evidence, though. Pardon the interruption, my lord, but damage to the mucous membranes of the throat is easily identified even in living subjects. Using a device called an endoscope recently demonstrated in practical use recently demonstrated in practical use in France. I want one the government can pay. I don't think so, and Dr. Gory, rest assured that your removal of evidence from the stores without permission will not go unpunished. We open up the dead to find the truth. I beg your pardon. But Mama, she chose to stitch her corpses up with all her secrets inside. That's wrong. Dr. Gory, it's looking as though she's chosen to walk a different path to her mama. Yes, the ring. What about the ring? I've just remembered something. An earlier incident. What incident? The one I recounted to you before, about a memory I have of Genshin Asogi saving my life. Nani? My father saved your life? It was 10 years ago on a foggy night. Genshin and I were walking down some back streets at a late hour. All of a sudden... Don't make a peep. You're coming with us. Don't make a peep. You're coming with us. All of our assailants were armed with pistols, their faces obscured by scarves. Bang. The next thing I knew, there was silence all around. Genshin lay on the cobbled street. Blood was seeping from his left hand. He'd shielded me. It was on the ring finger of his left hand that he used to wear the ring. Ah, are you saying? I've always believed those thugs were after me. But now I'm starting to question if perhaps I wasn't the intended target after all. Well, wait, but... Genshin was arrested 2 days after that attack. And in that short interval, the decisive evidence needed to indict him was miraculously found. You mean the ring was stolen from him? You think that's what those thugs were after that night?
Objection!
Objection. No, no! You pathetic coward. You expect me to believe that you weren't involved? What do you mean by that? It was you, wasn't it? You're the one who took it. You stole my father's ring. You set the whole thing up so that you could pay... Okay, I don't get to read that. Kazuma. Open your eyes. Ryunosuke. You must know deep down, the truth can be completely obscured even when your judgment is only slightly clouded. But at the moment, you seem to be floundering through a dense fog. That's not the only thing that's dense. Is that why you were so insistent I should be present in this trial? To see you like this? Well, this is an amusing spectacle. What a grandiose expression on your face, as if you were Lady Justice herself. Seems you've thoroughly convinced yourself of this alleged fabrication of the autopsy results. So much so that you're apparently blind to the blatant contradiction that would be born out of it. What? Though it's extremely hard to believe, let us imagine that there was some misconduct during the autopsy. If that were the case, why would Asogi not have disputed the findings in his trial? Oh. Damn. In the closed court hearing 10 years ago, the defendant never once denied the claims against him. Isn't that right, Lord Van Zeeks? Yes, that is indeed correct. Upon hearing the verdict of guilty, he merely closed his eyes, quietly accepting the judgment. The actions of a man who has accepted responsibility for his deeds and is resigned to his fate. But then... Oh my, that is very strange. If Mr. Asogi did nothing to oppose the charges against him, then that would surely mean there was no fabricated evidence. Shut up, you're on the defense. An obvious conclusion at which you should have arrived many minutes ago, Prosecutor Asogi. Your twisted loyalty and clouded judgment are hampering your ability for logical thought. Ugh. Clang. Genshin Asogi's silence at his hearing can mean only one thing. There was no fabrication of evidence during the autopsy of his final victim 10 years ago. Oh, no. Damn. But if that autopsy was all above board, there'll be nothing to stop Lord Strongheart bringing this trial to an immediate conclusion. Objection. Come on, we know who said it. Thank you, Ryunosuke. If it wasn't for your frank words just now, this trial may very well have ended prematurely. Kazuma. Yes, we wouldn't want premature adjudication. What's this latest absurdity, Counsel? My lord, your reasoning is perfectly sound, but for one giant hole. I beg your pardon? You claim my father's silence was due to the fact that there was no fabricated evidence. But there's another possible explanation. You've overlooked the possibility that he had a reason for maintaining that silence.
Objection!
Objection! Silence that would lead to him being convicted and sent to his death. Is this going to be diplomatic immunity? Let's find out. If the autopsy results were an invention, there's no conceivable reason why the man wouldn't have protested.
Objection!
Objection. Oh, those results were an invention, all right. There's no question of that. Or are you forgetting that two people with connection to that autopsy have been assassinated? If I force the grievances I feel from my mind, I start to see you in a very different light. I think perhaps it's you who's been living in delusion these 10 years. Me? Kazuma has created one last chance for us here, Mr. Naruhodo. If we can only show there was a reason for his father's silence in his trial, a reason why the man would have said nothing even though he was innocent, could it have been part of some negotiation, perhaps? Clang. Enough rhetoric. The court must be shown evidence. What proof do you have that could possibly explain Asogi's silence in court? I don't know. To look at this. Determine evidence such as measures have been taken to disguise the time of death. Oh, this is Gregson's. violated Clause 132 of Her Majesty's Code. Conduct for prisons, all rights to redundancy. Indications are that the jailbreak plot was conceived prior to the convict's incarceration. I believe that the convict engaged in some form of negotiation with prison staff in order to secure assistance. Full disclosure of information regarding these negotiations will be demanded. Let's try it.
Take that!
Take that! It's true that Genshin Asogi's silence during his trial resulted in his conviction, but that didn't actually lead to his execution. On the contrary, it led to his escape, an escape that was only possible because he'd been sentenced to death. Although I find it hard to believe my father would have negotiated in that way, the defense is correct. A fake execution, falsification of a death certificate, and a jailbreak inside a coffin. Clearly such an elaborate plan couldn't have been carried out by my father alone. He must have had the help of a collaborator from the judiciary. I have here the dismissal notice of the chief warder who was working in the prison at the time. The notes read, there are indications that the jailbreak was in planning prior to the inmate's incarceration. In other words, there were suggestions of some sort of negotiation between Mr. Asogi and the British government. In exchange for his silence in court, he was given an assurance that he would be broken out of prison. Yes, with that sort of clandestine agreement in place, I can imagine he would have kept very quiet. I would go further than that, in fact. I would say that the elaborate jailbreak of Mr. Asogi can be explained in no other way. Clang, 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 clang. Order! Order! First fabricated evidence and now a jailbreak conspiracy? Of course, because it's all intimately linked. The prosecution wishes to summon new witnesses to the stand. Witnesses. People who can testify about the jailbreak that took place 10 years ago. Governor Caden and the poor chief warder of the prison. I won't allow this trial to turn into a farce, to summon the governor to the prison after all these years. Oh, it wouldn't be any trouble, my lord. What? Father, my dear friend may appear a little, rattle-pated at times. I've never heard that word before. But I can assure you he is extremely thorough. He wired both Barclay and the local prison earlier, asking Governor Caden and Mr. Vigil to attend the Old Bailey as a matter of extreme urgency. Mr. Sholmes did that? Are you telling me that? Are you telling me that both men are, unless I'm much mistaken, waiting just outside the courtroom at this very moment? My lord, you must permit this trial to proceed as you declared at its onset. You promised that we would stop at nothing to uncover the whole truth behind these disturbing findings. Clang. Very well. Bring on the witnesses. I know it said bring in the witnesses, but that was funnier. Make no mistake, I, too, would like nothing more than to lay this business to rest once and for all. Good. Oh, yeah, that guy. He has that funky accent that I don't quite know how to do. Would the new witnesses state their names and occupations for the court, please? Aye. Barry Caden, governor of Barclay Prison. I apologize for that. Everyone calls me Gossip. I sell jaunty little tidbits. Your other persona, if you don't mind. Oh, I do beg your pardon. Of course. What an idiot. My name is Daily Vigil. I used to be the chief warder at the Barclay Prison. The reason you've been summoned here to court today is to testify about the jailbreak of the so-called professor 10 years ago. Losh, the professor! We've already been through all this before. A decade ago. And the conclusion was that there was not anything untoward. Why am I having trouble saying that simple untoward? Nothing untoward happened, is what he's basically saying. A convict escaped from your prison, Governor. Hardly what you'd call nothing untoward. Well... The convict's death certificate was somehow falsified after he was allegedly executed, and his escape and he escaped the prison inside his own coffin. A plan of that complexity could never have been carried out without the help of somebody of influence inside the prison. Governor Caden, don't imagine that the passage of time will afford you any protection. Uh-oh. If it turns out that you were involved in the plot to break Mr. Asogi out of your prison, then of course, the consequences will be very serious. In all likelihood, a capital punishment. Ooh. Gads, hold on there, laddie. Clang. Witness, Governor Caden, you will cease that ridiculous accent at once. Aye, sir. Yes, sir. You have a critical role to play in the public safety of our country, a great responsibility to shoulder. The significance of your testimony in court cannot be understated. Therefore, think carefully before you speak. And Prosecutor Asogi, if you threaten the witness again, you will be held in contempt of court. Fuck you. My apologies, my lord. There's no disputing the fact that an intricate jailbreak plot was enacted 10 years ago. Clearly, you were both involved in some way. So you will testify before the court now and explain exactly what took place. Clang. Very well, let the witnesses give their formal testimony. Tell the court everything you know of the plot to break Asogi out of Barclay 10 years ago. Okay. It was the day that Japanese jock was found guilty. The directive came from the prosecutor's office. That was fairly straightforward for him. I assigned the convict to the chief warder Vigil here and put the plan into action behind the scenes. He is speaking normal English. I was responsible for Asogi right up until the night of his execution, but I knew nothing of any plot. I did not... Oh, goddamn. I did not ken if there were some negotiations between the convict and the prosecutor's office. All I did was carry out my duty for Her Majesty's Great British Empire. A directive from the prosecutor's office? Are you saying that was the jailbreak plot? Aye, that's right. Who sent it? Who authorized that plan? I did not ken that. I forget what that means when he says ken. Was it no? I do not know that. Is that what he's saying? I forgot. It's been a while since I had to deal with that, with his ridiculous manner of speaking. You're saying you don't know? Listen, there was not a thing about the professor's case that was unusual in some way. There was not a thing about the professor case, so I don't even know. I did not ask any questions, I just did what I was told to do. More than that, I could not tell you. I see. But if the jailbreak plan originated from the prosecutor's office, then one thing is very clear. As suspected, there were clandestine dealings going on between Mr. Asogi and that office. The jailbreak was promised in exchange for Mr. Asogi admitting to crimes he didn't commit. Clang. That, counsel, is nothing more than speculation on your part. So, let me ask the defense. Oh, yes, my lord. I fail to see how these witnesses have any more pertinent information here. Do you intend to assert your right to cross-examination? Yeah, absolutely. I have no intention of squandering a single opportunity, my lord. It seems all you Japanese are fiercely tenacious. Clang. Very well. Proceed, counsel. Cross-examination. It was the day that Japanese jock was found guilty. The directive came from the prosecutor's office. Okay. And you say you don't know who actually issued the directive? Aye, that's right. All I can be sure of is that it was official. But if it was from the prosecutor's office, that narrows down who could have issued it straight away. And it wasn't me. I cannot even say with certainty that it did originate from the prosecutor's office. What? There's no telling where it started. There's a fair chance it came from higher up the ladder. Basically, I cannot give you any indication of who was behind it. Yeah, that's it. I just need to stop thinking I need to roll as R's. That's a lot better. You can't be serious. All we can say for sure is that the order must have come from somebody in authority, I suppose. The likes of us on the ground, as it were, did not bother with idle speculation. We just get the job done. Okay. I assigned the convict to the chief warder vigil here, and put the plan into action behind the scenes.
Hold it!
Hold it. So, Mr. Vigil, you didn't know anything about it at all? That's right. My only role in this scheme was as a scapegoat. That's right. That's right, isn't it, Governor? Some poor beggar had to take the rap for it. Alright then. Who else did know about the plan? I've no first idea, laddie. My part in the whole business was basically just dealing with the aftermath. But I would not be surprised if there were other folk in the prison service who'd been given similar orders. You don't know who else was involved? Aye, that's right. All I can tell you is that the night it actually happened, the person at the reins was Dr. Stevens. Dr. Courtney Stevens? Or Dr. Scythe as she's known now. Huh. Why did I have to get caught up in such terrible business? I was responsible for Asogi right up until the night of his execution, but I knew nothing of any plot. Is that right? Did you not notice anything unusual happening in the lead up to the night? Oh, everything was unusual. Exception after exception. After all, it was the professor. The man had terrorized the country as never before with his crimes. In order to hide his identity, he was forced to wear an iron mask over his head. Of course, that would make him inconspicuous. Hideous treatment. The fellow was surprisingly docile for someone who'd taken the lives of 5 of the country's nobles. Being the chief warder, I was the person permitted to approach his cell. I can still hardly believe I was duped by my own country. I believe you jumped from the window of the governor's office when the jailbreak was blamed on you, didn't you? Lost Vigil, I cannot apologize enough. No, Governor, I don't believe you can. It won't change what happened. And what else can you tell us about the situation, Governor Caden? Huh. I did not know if there were some negotiations between the convict and the prosecutor's office. Wait a minute.
Hold it!
Forgot to cross-examine him on that. But you've already acknowledged that orders came from the prosecutor's office to arrange for the man's escape. There must have been some sort of negotiation. It's the only explanation. Aye, well, be that as it may, I did not know nothing about it. The witness stand is no place for telling what you don't know for sure. I know that much, I do. Then I presume you also know this. Not telling what you do know is a criminal offense. Aye. So you were just following orders, is that it? I'm afraid that won't absolve you of guilt here. A man was still killed illegally, even if he was a condemned criminal. You may very well be found complicit in murder, Governor. So that's what it's to be, is it? Even with the threat of conviction, you won't break your silence. All I did was carry out my duty for Her Majesty's Great British Empire. Did you carry out the plan in its entirety? I did everything I could at the time. As you know, Genshin Isogi was shot dead in Lowgate Cemetery after the escape. Tell me, was that part of the plan too? My instructions were to do with getting the jock out of the jail and nothing more. I cannot tell you anything about what happened after that. Only, personally, I believe his death was the last part of the plan. Ooh. Excuse me. I almost forgot about that mechanic. Mr. Vigil, is something wrong? Whoa. Yes, sir. What can I do for you, sir? He's saluting now. What is it, some sort of Barclay convention? What Governor Caden was just saying seemed to upset you. Did it bring something to mind, perhaps? For the last 10 years, I've completely blotted out the memories of that time from my mind. I was betrayed by my superiors in the name of my country. Just as my father was betrayed, it seems. But you see, thinking back now, I really can't imagine that the shooting of Mr. Isogi in the cemetery was ever part of the plan. What makes you think that? Well, it just doesn't make sense, does it? To make the man admit to crimes he didn't commit with the promise of a jailbreak, only to kill him in the end. That's treachery of the worst kind. But the point is, if the intention was always to betray him, why would there be any need for all the chicaneries of an escape? That's a good question. Ah. Yes, that's quite true. If whoever negotiated with Isogi never intended to keep his or her end of the bargain, it would have been far simpler just to let the man be executed in prison as dictated by his sentence. All happened in that vast chamber of secrets that is Barclay, behind the high prison walls. I suppose nobody knows what really went on in the execution room now. Yes, it's an unsettling mystery, certainly. Truth be told, there is a wee matter that's never quite made sense to me. If you believe there was some kind of negotiation behind the jailbreak between a Sogi and a body at the top, it does not quite add up, does it? Governor Caden, I must insist that you explain these doubts that you have by amending your formal testimony. Gads. Aye, go on then. Oh, he looks kind of pissed. He looks worried. It seems to me that the Japanese fella did not have nothing to bargain with.
Hold it!
Admitting to the crimes, that was what he had to... Admitting to the crimes, that was what he had to bargain with Shirley. Do not be calling me Shirley. I cannot see that myself. After all, did the prosecution no have conclusive evidence against the Carly? This, you mean? Discovered during the final victim's autopsy? There's every possibility that this conclusive evidence was fabricated by Scotland Yard and the prosecutor's office. Objection! Possibilities are all very well, but nothing has been proven. You can holler about misconduct in the trial 10 years ago all you like. But if you can't establish that it happened with hard evidence, no one's going to listen. Aye, that's right. So what I'm saying is, the convict had nothing he could use for any kind of bargaining at all. That's clearly an indication to use evidence. The witness makes an astute point. Logically, it would seem no negotiation could have taken place. And yet the plan to break the man out of prison was definitely put into practice. So he must have been armed with something that gave him an angle to negotiate. Yeah, it's just flat out telling me. So Asogi agrees to confess to the crimes because he was assured he'd be broken out of prison later. I really don't think that Kazuma's father would have engaged in such negotiations. Then perhaps something compelled him to agree. What a terrible thing, using the law to legitimize such underhanded dealings with a desperate man. Only to double-cross him in the end. It's quite the opposite of justice. I can't help feeling there's something about this apparent negotiation that doesn't quite add up. Something doesn't quite add up, Mr. Naruhodo. Stop reading my mind. The blue text is thought. No, it doesn't. But I can't quite put my finger on what yet. Well, in that case, we must keep digging until we identify the problem. Okay, well, we're just gonna go to the new number 5 here. Okay, I got something here that's gonna... Bogey's ring. I, Genshin Asogi, hereby request upon my death, possessions and wealth belonging to me, delivered to my son, Kazuma Asogi, in the Empire of Japan. Deep sadness, I accept my fate in this foreign land, knowledge that I will never see my homeland or family again, but I regret nothing about my chosen path. Notice. Not gonna be that. Okay, let's go back to that one. Because I don't understand why. Let's try. Ooh. Confessing under oath to murders he didn't commit on a verbal assurance of later being broken out of prison. Genshin Isogi was taking an incredibly risky gamble. Very true. There was nothing to stop the British breaking their word and executing him behind closed doors anyway. Under normal circumstances, no man would stake his life on a government's or on a gentleman's agreement like that. Which means that Mr. Isogi must have had a trump card. Something that guaranteed he wouldn't be betrayed. Some kind of weapon. Havers! The fellow wouldn't possibly have had anything like that. But you know that he did, Governor. The Isogi Papers. The name given on the last will and testament of Genshin Isogi. Ah! It turns out that Mr. Isogi was hiding his will in his cell at Barclay. Chief Warder Vigil caught him with it one day. You squealed, did ya? You wee rat. Did I not tell you to keep that a secret? You can't touch me now. I'm touching you right now. When Mr. Vigil caught sight of that will through the bars of the convict cell, Mr. Isogi pleaded with the warder. All right then, but what's on the paper? A last will and testament. This will is the only weapon I have left now. Oh yeah, he did say that. But how is it a weapon? That part I don't get. And after the convict had been killed following the elaborate pretense of the jailbreak, that document mysteriously disappeared, didn't it? Well, yes. All the prison warders searched through the belongings in his cell, but that will was just nowhere to be found. As I understand it, an exhaustive search was made for the document, which became known as the Isogi Papers. Governor Caden, I believe you ordered your prison staff to find it at all costs, didn't you? Eh? Would I be right in saying that you knew? You knew that the so-called Isogi Papers had the potential to make great waves somehow? Jings, what the blazes are you blethering about? The will was found right and proper in the fella's cell where I said it would be. But how can that be? Where in his cell? We all searched the place from top to bottom. Well, you did not do a proper job, eh? You peely-wally galoot. You can't criticize me now. I don't work for you anymore. I showed it to you for, did I know you lawyer? I showed it to you for, did I know you young lawyer? Yes, you did. I have the document here. It's written in Japanese and reads, The Last Will and Testament of Genshin Isogi. Which means everything is as it should be. Not quite, my lord. You see, there's an undeniable inconsistency here. What? What inconsistency? Mr. Isogi describes this document as the only weapon he had left, and yet, this will contains nothing of significance at all. Nothing that would have given the convict any leverage. Are you suggesting, my learned friend, that the last will and testament stored at Barclay Prison all these years is actually a fake? As has clearly been demonstrated already, what went on at Barclay Prison was far from above board. Clang. That last vilification by the defense was an affront to the entire British legal system. This absurd notion of a weapon is something for which we have only the former chief warder's word. The man could quite easily be lying, or at the very least, sorely mistaken. What? No, I definitely heard him say that, I swear. Clearly we need to get to the bottom of this. We need to know exactly what happened with these so-called Asogi papers. A waste of time. If the will was fake, where is the real document?
Objection!
Objection? Mr. Vigil was stabbed in the back by the judiciary 10 years ago. He lost everything, very nearly his own life. And now you're going to do it again. You're ready to brand him a liar and turn your back on him without even letting him defend himself. It's clear that Barclay Prison is hiding something. It's clear that the jailbreak was masterminded by someone in the prosecutor's office. It's clear that someone listed... I don't even... Crossover. What did you say? We should hear more. We have to let him testify. The trial must go on. Man's voice must be heard. It would seem that a vocal few here are utterly blind to the truth. Very well then, let the witness testify again. Tell the court precisely what you think you saw of the convict's last will and testament. Yes, sir, my lord. The Asogi papers. And actually, I'm going to take a little bit of a break, because I've been at this for a while. I'm going to get up, stretch my legs, get something to drink, and I'll be back in 10 to 15 minutes.